Here we go.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning. Yeah. All right. So we are multi-streaming today. So please excuse us if there's any kind of strange behavior. I'm trying to keep up with the chat everywhere. Big hail to the chat. That's right. H for honor, A for accountability, I for integrity, and L for loyalty. All right. Important values that we really want to see back into the world again. Today we have Mr. Chad Eros over here. Let me just see if I can make sure everything's turned on, because we are streaming today on Rumble as well. We're streaming everywhere, so let's make sure this is working here. All right, so waiting for stream on this. On Rumble, I have to just do a little change on Rumble, I think, over here. So what I'm going to do is do that change, edit settings. So yeah, please excuse us as we just have a little bit of this multi-streaming setup. There you go. All
multi-streaming for the first time today, so we're going big.
Exactly. Okay, so there you go. So that's changing now. The Rumble should be live as well. We have Mr. Chad Eros, and he's going to tell us all about himself. Just give it one more moment, and I'm going to double check that everything is correct. Everything is streaming perfectly. All right, so there we go. We are... Let's see if this is working. I need to open the chat up here. Okay, good. So Rumble looks good. Live chat is open. And we've got the YouTube chat. You see, this is like a real heavy multi-streaming. We got the Facebook. That should be live as well now. If someone can check if the Facebook is live, I'd appreciate it. First time for us doing something like this. We did do a test a few days ago, but still new, right? As they say, new. Okay. All right, and the Twitter. Let's see if that's up as well. If you'd be so kind, Pan, to double check that for me.
I did, and it is live.
It is live. Okay, fantastic. All right. Big hail to the chat. Rumble is good, says Barry. All right, so if you be some kindness to refresh Mr. Tinfoil Hat Nick, then you'll be able to see that. I think that is going. Yeah, looks good to me over here. All right, here we go. So, Mr. Chad Eros, if you would be so kind to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background. I really appreciate that, brother.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me on War Campaign. And my name's Chad Eros. I am a CPA. I have an accounting diploma, a business degree with a major in accounting. I'm licensed for public practice in Saskatchewan. That's all the boring stuff about me. I have 12 kids and a foster kid, and ranging from 5 years old to 24 years old. Those are my kids. So I'm an old guy too, and getting older, getting up there. Me and my whole family, my wife, all my kids, my mom and dad, my sister, brother-in-law, they're all their kids. We were not vaccinated. We made a conscious choice not to. My wife is the champion of making sure that our kids are healthy, wealthy, and wise. And decades ago, my wife took our kids off the very stringent vaccination schedule. So our first kids, our first babies were getting shots like crazy. And my wife started to notice some adverse reactions, and
I'm just going to stop you right there, because I don't want to get too much into that, into the fact, the science of it or anything like that, considering we are on many different platforms here. Right. So the thing was,
us. Yeah, in a nutshell, that's me, my family. When the COVID shots came, we didn't go along with that, and so there's a lot of dots, there's a lot of blanks to fill in between all that. But if you have any questions about that, like maybe what we went through as a non-vaccinated family and worker and all that, that you can feel free to ask questions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so here you are. You don't necessarily want to go with the program. Your family decides they want to make their own medical decisions. And at that point, well, we're in about 2021, right? So the situation is a lot of Canadians, I think many, many Canadians, especially the people here in the chat, hail the chat, thank you for being here, are not on board, right, Chad? So what happens then?
Right. So, at my workplace, I worked at a college, and we were teaching from Zoom, and they announced that we had to come back on campus, but that we had to be vaccinated, fully vaccinated, to come back to work. And if we weren't, then we couldn't. So there was a little bit of back and forth argument. And then they said, well, okay, you don't have to be double vaxxed, but you have to get tested 3 times a week, so that was for students and faculty. And that would have cost, at the time, about $1,200 a month. So that's for students and faculty. So my wife and I looked into how to get this done cheaper. And just a sec here. I got to end this call.
No problem.
And so my wife found a place that was doing it at cost. She got trained under them, approved under Saskatchewan Health Authority. So teachers and students would come to our place in the morning and get tested here. Management at my school started sending out emails to students and teachers saying, don't get tested by my wife. She's not qualified. They wouldn't accept her negative COVID tests. And my lawyer had to send them a cease and desist order to stop interfering with her business. I was being called into investigation meetings regarding the legitimacy of my COVID tests. And basically, on the day that I went to Ottawa, I was scheduled for my 3rd investigation meeting to question the legitimacy of my negative COVID tests and the legitimacy of my wife being a negative COVID tester. And then Tamara said, hey, we really want you to come out. I really need you out here to help with the money because it's crazy. And so, and I had been saying, I don't want to go to these meetings anymore. Like, I'm done with this. Leave me alone. And so, an hour before, I was scheduled, an hour before I left to go to Ottawa, I was scheduled to go to yet another investigation meeting. My union said this is harassment, and they advised me to file a harassment complaint. So I considered myself constructively dismissed, and I went to Ottawa. And we had, of course, it was the most odd the most odd argument I was having with my workplace after I left, because I said, you guys fired me. And my workplace said, no, you quit. Imagine that. Hey, usually it's like the other way around, where we fired you and you're like, no, I quit. But it was the other way around, right? They were saying that I quit and that I wasn't constructively dismissed. So
okay,
that's what happened. That's the lead up to me going out there.
Okay, so that's the lead up to coming to Ottawa. So we've got Miss Karen Tagliaferri here who says, who's this? All right, so this is Mr. Chad Eros, who's an accountant. You're a CPA. That's right. And you teach, right? So can you give us a little bit of your professional qualifications, brother? Thank you.
Yeah. So like I said, I have a business degree, a Bachelor of Business Administration with a major in accounting. And I have an accounting designation, and I was teaching accounting, finance, managerial accounting, and developing curriculum for accounting and finance at a college. And then through Chris Garrah, I ended up getting involved with helping the original finance committee deal with GoFundMe to communicate in a in an appropriate way to get $1 million released from the GoFundMe account. That was the first $1 million released. And then right now I'm teaching finance at a local college. Again, I'm teaching again, and I'm doing corporate taxes, personal taxes, running a practice now. So I'm self-employed right now, as well as teaching a little bit again. So
Okay, so you
And I
are a
was in Ottawa
CPA.
for 3 weeks.
You're in
I
Ottawa
was
for
out
3
in
weeks.
Ottawa for 3 weeks at the protest, trying to help set up a proper, transparent way to deal with the millions and millions of dollars in fundraisers going on.
Okay, perfect. Let's see here. Hail, the chat says Sterling Lighthouse. Morning, Dan says Hayes. Hail, brother. That's Hayes in the chat. Hayes MTL. Just remember what I thought you all, says FJT. Akuma says Rose smoking peace pipe. Wrong Indian, brother. Hey, all the Indians are the right Indians, brother. You know it. All right. Let's see over here. So what we have here is Mr. Chad Eros. He's an accountant, CPA, teaches accounting classes, and you were called in to deal with the finances around the fundraising that was happening for the Freedom Convoy. Is that a good characterization, or what would you add to that or subtract?
Yeah. So Chris Garrah from Adopt a Trucker, who I knew when we lived in BC together, and he's a really good guy, very charitable, loving, caring person. He set up Adopt a Trucker, which is a billeting system to help the truckers have food and shelter and warmth on their way to Ottawa and back, and while they were there as well. He's like my best friend. So when they said they were having troubles communicating properly with GoFundMe in a way that GoFundMe would find acceptable, he said, I know a guy, because I had a public practice in Chilliwack, BC, where Chris and I both lived, in downtown Chilliwack, and I had a business consulting business as well, and I also have commercial banking experience. So I was a commercial loan underwriter, and I was a financial analyst for years. I worked in downtown Vancouver, trained in Toronto. So he said, I know a guy who can help. If this guy can't help, then I don't know who can. So then I started, I got linked up with the original finance committee dealing with the GoFundMe. Really nice people. They're like very genuine, salt of the earth. The main person I dealt with, her name was Helen Gazika and Christina Kenyon. They were These
are people from GoFundMe?
No, those people were on the original finance committee that were dealing with GoFundMe. So those two ladies, Christina Kenyon, she spoke with GoFundMe primarily. As I started to help her, basically on February 1st, she said, I want to hand off communications with GoFundMe to you. You start talking with them. She said, I'm not getting anywhere with them. And by then, on February 1st, the lawyers also got involved, like Keith Wilson and JCCF. I ended up on a Zoom call with them. So that's when Christina asked me to draft a letter responding to their numerous questions about whether the protest was violent or whether like the captains and were promoting violence and things like that, and asking them to like disassociate with certain people and things like that. So I wrote up a response. I gave it to Christina. She approved it. Then I gave it to JCCF lawyers, and then they wrote their own response to GoFundMe, and then they gave, I don't, whether or not they gave that to them or not, it's difficult to know because I'd have to look. Sorry, I'm moving my camera here. I'd have to ask.
Don't worry about that right now. Yeah, just okay. All right, so
I want to ask, like the right. Sorry, bro. Yeah, no I think they did give it to them, and through the POEC report, it appears that they did not like the answer from the lawyers, so they froze the fundraiser.
This is GoFundMe.
Yeah, GoFundMe froze the fundraiser, and then on February 4th, they announced that that they were that they were going to take all the money and give it to a charity of their choosing, which people kind of revolted against. And they said, okay, we're just going to refund it. I don't know. I kind of skipped. There was a meeting on February 3rd when we were all in Ottawa, we gathered around a conference phone. We spoke with GoFundMe, the Keith Wilson, JCCF lawyers. Tamara Leach was there, and her husband was sitting beside her. I was there, and we answered the GoFundMe questions. They expressed that they were not happy that there was a team of lawyers there, that they had to lawyer up as well on the other end of the phone, and that they asked us not to record the meeting. They promised they wouldn't record it either, and it just started to get really weird. And then the next day, the campaign was frozen, and they said, we're going to give it to a charity of our choice. There was this revolt. The revolt was this: people started to request refunds through their credit card, and when that happens, it costs them $15 per refund request. And so once people started to do that, GoFundMe said, whoa, okay, we'll give your money back. We're not going to give the money to a charity of our choosing. So
this is a chargeback. So when GoFundMe put up, and I remember that press release they put up on their blog, and that was done, sorry, what day was that? You've got the date?
Yeah, February 4th.
Okay, so February 4th, GoFundMe puts up a press release on their blog and says, all that money that has been collected, we will be giving it to a charity of our choice. The people they're not happy with it, the donors, and then they start issuing chargebacks, and you're saying to me that a chargeback costs the company approximately $15 per chargeback, and they're not happy with that. So that really was the reason they decided, hey, we're just going to do a refund we're going to just do refunds to all the donors. Right. Oh, interesting.
That's my understanding of it anyway. That's what was going on. That was a lot of the buzz that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. Okay, so here you are. So I want to just back up again and give people who are just joining right now, you understand what's happening. So Mr. Chad Eros, he is a teacher of accounting courses as well as does corporate accounting, business accounting, and was called in by Mr. Chris Garrah. That's your link to the Freedom Convoy, right? You're somebody who didn't like the mandates, as you were saying. Your family, your wife had decided that she was not going to be on track for that, for the childhood injections and the rest. At that point, Chris Garrah is from Adopt a Trucker is your connection, or is there another connection as well, so that we're clear?
No, he was on Zoom calls with the captains, with the road captains, and he said, "Hey, you'll never believe it. I'm in meetings with these people. I'm going to be the person that goes to Ottawa a week before everybody arrives, and I'm going to deal with the police and where the trucks should go, where the stage should go, where the porta potty should go, everything. And these people need help with financing and money." So Chris is the Adopt a Trucker guy. He ran a campaign on GiveSendGo, and that's how I ended up linked in with GiveSendGo, because they asked Chris, who is the guy that we should talk to about having a backup fundraiser in case GoFundMe shuts down their fundraiser, and Chris Garrah said, you should talk to Chad. And so that's how the GiveSendGo fundraiser came about. They talked to me. I said, and this is so weird, bro, because at the time, it was really hard to get a hold of Tamara and Chris Barber in the chaos of the protest in Ottawa, and so they talked to me and they said, hey, why don't you set this up? So just in case the truckers GoFundMe gets shut down. And I said, I was like, who am I to set this up? Who the heck am I? I was just asked to help in the first place. So it was a weird conversation that I was having with Jacob Wells, the owner, and some other people that were on the phone.
The owner of GiveSendGo. So to be clear, there's a brother and sister team at GiveSendGo, the American company, right? That's Jacob Wells. So Jacob Wells, you were on the phone with him, and this is before the GoFundMe has been frozen. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the GiveSendGo Freedom Convoy 2022 campaign went live on January 31st, and just like a little bit of money was trickling in because the main focus was on GoFundMe. But then on February 4th, when GoFundMe shut it down, about $1.5 million a day was being donated to the GiveSendGo, and their servers almost couldn't. Or I'm not a computer expert. I know a little bit how they work, but their system was having trouble keeping up with just that. And then there was the bot attacks, which was insane. And I think Jacob Wells testified to what was happening there. I think they're having millions of bot attacks a day, trying to shut their website down. And then not everybody knows, but a lot of people know that his website eventually got hacked, and frozen and shut down and stuff like that. So that's the Coles notes on the GiveSendGo story there.
Okay, so you are the one who actually initiated the GiveSendGo. Then your name is the legal name attached to the GiveSendGo?
Yeah, so Jacob Wells only spoke with me on a daily basis about the GiveSendGo account. He never spoke with anybody else. And I set up the Stripe account, the Canadian Stripe account, to collect because the GiveSendGo funds. A Stripe account is a credit card processor. So whenever you want to donate to like the fundraiser on GiveSendGo, and they may have changed this by now, but you had to set up your own payment processor account through Stripe. And it took me a while to do that because we didn't even have a bank account because no financial institutions were responding to me regarding setting up a bank account for the nonprofit corporation.
Okay,
Freedom
so
2022.
I'm just going to back it up here. So you are the person who set up a Stripe account to receive funds for the GiveSendGo, which was active but not really receiving real, heavy donations, let's say heavy usage, until the GoFundMe was shut down. And you also are the person who incorporated the not-for-profit known informally as Freedom Corp, right? Freedom Corp,
Yeah.
Okay, so you.
I don't like that. I hate that when people say Freedom Corp. It sounds so cold and ugly. But
right.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, and what is the official name of Freedom Corp in federal documents?
Freedom 2022, Human Rights and Freedoms.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you incorporate that when you get to Ottawa or before you got to Ottawa?
I incorporated that before I got to Ottawa on February 30th.
February 30th. January, right?
Oh, yep. Sorry. You're right. January 30th, I incorporated that when I was in Moose Jaw. Yeah.
Okay, so you incorporate what we're going to call informally now as Freedom Corp, which is a not-for-profit, federally incorporated corporation. And what position do you have at that point within it? Because there are two board of directors who are at that point set. I pulled the federal papers, right, and the amendments as well. At that point, only your name and Chris Garrah's name are on the incorporation papers as directors. And yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So on January 30th, I had talks with people on a conference call. Tamara Leach was in it as well. And this is all public record information in the POEC report as well, if anybody wants to read it. But I was on a phone with them, and we were talking about like what form this fundraiser should have for transparency and legitimacy and stuff like that. And people were talking about whether it should just be a community bank account, like a soccer association of parents. They just you don't have to incorporate to do that. You can just say we're the Moose Jaw Parents Soccer Association and open up a community bank account at a bank, or whether it should be a not-for-profit. And so we decided probably a not-for-profit would be right. And
when you say we, who decided that?
So there was a guy there was a non-practicing lawyer named Russell Hebert on the call. Me, Tamara Leach, a lady named Sandra Sable, and she's with another not-for-profit organization as well. Anyways, Russell said that in a week or so he could probably get a law firm that he knew of to incorporate, and I said by then the protest would probably be over. So so I just jumped on my computer. I incorporated it using the federal government tool, the online tools, and gave it a name.
I'm going to pause you.
20.
Right, I'm going to pause you right here because in the chat people are asking, we have Miss Pierre Gagnon who says no incorporation exists without 3 signatories. That is incorrect. I have incorporated with my wife and I, so that's you don't necessarily need that now, unless you mean a signatory from the government. It generates a digital signature there when you do incorporate, so perhaps that's what you mean. But I will pull up the papers here, if you don't mind, just to show. Okay, the incorporation papers, because it's important to do this, right? It's very important to do this so that everybody can see what is what. Okay, so here we go. We've got the incorporation papers on the screen right now. This is Freedom 22, Human Rights and Freedoms. This is the corporation number one. Pardon me?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And then you've got over here, if you continue here, this is the corporation number 1372685-1. This is 2022-0130. That is January 30th. As Mr. Chad Eros has just said, Freedom 2022, Human Rights and Freedoms, which is the name we informally are calling Freedom Corp for the sake of discussion. And right over here, declaration by Mr. Chad Eros, original signed by Mr. Chad Eros, and the rest is what's generated by the system. You did this digitally on their website, is that correct?
Yeah, if you want to scroll back up to the purpose, or scroll down now.
Sure.
I typed that purpose in there as well.
Let me see if I can.
So keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Right, go ahead, please.
So it's hard for me to see, but it says advocacy against government, agents of government, or any other organization, person, or, sorry, my face is in the way here, or individuals' actions, laws, policies, and practices that violate human rights and freedoms, paying special attention to creation of class systems through mandates, social credit systems, rewards and punishments for government compliance, passport systems, and more. So, just based on my conversations with people and my understanding of the issues, I just whipped that up and put it into its purpose, because you have to put a purpose in when you incorporate as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, especially for a not-for-profit, right? You have to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, I haven't incorporated not-for-profit, so there you go. You got to put a purpose in there for that. That's good to know. All right, so here we are. You've incorporated this on the 30th of January. And your role at this point, you are a director, as well as, because the original papers have 2 names on it, right? Which is your name and Chris Garrah. So you're the only directors of the Freedom Corp at this point on the 30th.
Yes, that's right. And so you have to have at least one director when you incorporate a not-for-profit. And whether or not I was going to stay on as a director or not I had no, I didn't know whether I was going to do it, but I did know that I thought something formal should be created for transparency and proper legal use of funds. So that's what happened. And Chris Garrah's name, I put on there. He was my number one link, and also we needed an address, right? So I put him on for his address. And to tell you the truth, because it didn't seem like the original finance committee or Tamara were 100% sure what they wanted to do. I didn't even know who was going to use this company. So at that point, it's kind of like just a shell company, right? I don't know. I asked I asked Chris. I said, "Well, it's kind of hard to
Which
get
Chris?
a hold." Chris Garrah. I said to Chris, "It's in the chaos. It's kind of hard to get a hold of Tamara and other people, and I don't even know if they're going to use this. Like, I don't know if they're going to be able to organize at this protest to put a board together." To do all the like formal things that you need to do. So I said to Chris, do you want to use this for your fundraiser? Like for Adopt a Trucker? And he said, no, I just want to go informally the way I'm going right now. But eventually on February 7th at the protest, a bunch of people got together in Chris Barber's hotel room, and we ratified some bylaws that got put together by a law firm, the same law firm that Russell Hebert referred to. They put some bylaws together. We voted to ratify them. And
When you say we, who's we at this point? Because there's only two directors.
Right. So there was some people that got invited to Chris Barber's room.
Which hotel was this?
That would have been, I believe, the Ark Hotel. Okay. And so the people that got eventually listed as the members, the directors, were in that room. And except for Benjamin Dichter, who was a few rooms down, so I had to run down the hallway and get his signature as a member of Freedom 2022. And the directors, the new directors, were voted on. So that was an interesting meeting because I told them, look, I don't need to be your treasurer. I can help you as a third party, kind of like basically like the lawyers were doing, like be a third party advisor. One of you can handle it. And they said, no, we really want you as the treasurer. So yeah, that's basically how I ended up becoming like an official director, not just a founding director. I got voted on as the treasurer. Tamara Leach was the president, Chris Barber vice president, me treasurer, Sean Thiessen secretary, Benjamin Dichter director at large, and same with Miranda Gassinor. She was a director as well. And then there were members. There were 10 members. So all the directors that I just mentioned were members of the not-for-profit as well. So not-for-profits don't have shareholders. They have members.
Just hold on a second here, if you don't mind. I'm just going to pull up the amendment that is in the federal papers, over here, so everyone can see at home, that we are, to the best of our absolute ability here at the War Campaign, we are sticking to the facts. What we have over here is an amendment, and this amendment was signed by Alan G. Warnock, and I keep seeing his name coming up, Chad, and this is Alan G. Warnock. What is your knowledge of him?
That's the law firm that Russell Hebert referred to in the first place, that he could get them to incorporate. And I said, if it's going to take them a week, then I'll just do it. And then when we were in Ottawa, we were trying to get an Ontario law firm to come up with bylaws because they're operating in Ontario, but no law firm in Ontario would do business with us. So then I said, oh, hey, Russell said that there was a law firm in Alberta that would help us. So then we asked Alan Warnock to create the bylaws, and then he did. He sent them to me on February 7th. And so on February 7th, that's when the corporation truly had an operating board, or like a board of directors and members. And
a set of bylaws.
And a set of bylaws, yes.
Governing that board. Okay, so at this point, this is the date right over here that they started as directors in this amendment that was submitted to the federal government. And you've got your name, which is not in bold, as well as Mr. Chris Garrah. So Chad Eros, Chris Garrah, original founding directors of the organization, the corporation, the not-for-profit federal corporation known as Freedom Corp informally. And then you've got these new names over here listed. You have Miranda Gassinor, Sean Thiessen, Tamara Leach, Chris Barber, Benjamin Dichter. And these are the people who are at the Ark Hotel in that room, as you just mentioned. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. And so basically, Tamara chose like those people. I think she chose them with the lawyers and Chris Barber. Even up till like 2 months ago, I didn't know how those people got chosen, and I was still talking to Tamara like, how did you, like, who's Miranda? Like, why did you choose her? And I'm not going to tell you her answer. But anyways, like, I didn't know how those people got chosen. And Keith Wilson testified that at the POEC that none of these people really knew each other. Basically, I'll tell you this. Tamara said that whoever was around her at the time and who was talking to her, that's who she said should be on the board and who should be members. So
okay,
that's kind of how, I mean, again, it's kind of a testament to the, it's a testament to the chaos and kind of the grassroots, because I've seen like some hilarious charts with like all these like lines trying to connect who knows who and and stuff like that. Like the protest was like planned by some puppeteers.
Okay, we'll stop. Right, we'll stop right there. We're not going to go into conjecture or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Absolutely. Let me read some of the chat over here, and then we're going to continue. We got Ashley, and she says, that's Ashley. She says, hail the chat, Ro, Pen, and Gat, and a big hail to the chat. Thank you for being here. And Mr. Chad Eros, thank you also for being here, brother. Appreciate your time. Okay, we've got, let's see what else we got over here. We got Good Morning Ottawa from Central Ontario Adventures. We've got Dakin, who says, you can't handle the truth. Okay, well, we're going to do our best. We've got FJT in the chat. Hail, brother. Hail, Freedom, says Barry Dutton sells homes. Hail the chat, says Anthony Cotillo. Okay. All right. So here we are. Freedom Corp has been incorporated. Directors have now been added. A set of bylaws have been signed off on. And now you're a real not-for-profit in the sense that you're operating. So what's the first order of business?
Well, that's a good question, because the not-for-profit, really, the first and primary and most urgent need was to deal with the funds in a legal and transparent manner. Because once the money is being handled by a not-for-profit corporation, the not-for-profit corporation would be bound by the legislation in the Not-for-Profit Act, which actually has a lot of sections about financial reporting, transparency, and its commitment to the public good. So that was like I would say the first order of business, Ro. And then I think besides that, I think it kind of got a little bit confusing. And I've said this before. This might help answer that question. The Freedom Convoy to Ottawa and the protest are two separate things. The convoy was like a parade with people on the streets and overpasses and cheering and Canadian flags. But then once they got to Ottawa, it's like the convoy captains almost lost their purpose, and then new captains emerged on the streets. And you were there, so you probably saw this too. I walked the streets, and leaders on the streets started to emerge, and people started to kind of form around them. So what was the purpose of the non-for-profit corporation? Well, they started to try and be like maybe like a voice or like kind of like a formal organization that perhaps the authorities could speak to, that they could pass messages on to the to the street, to the like street captains, I call them. So it'll be like the convoy captains passing on messages to the street captains. And I'm just trying to make sense out of what their purpose would be.
Okay.
And
All
I
right.
think I could point to that mayor deal, right? Where
I'll just pause you
where
right there. I have an interesting question because I want to stay as focused as we can here.
you
Okay.
bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is more along the lines, in my opinion, of kind of conjecture, trying to figure out, the communication strategy between, as you term it, street captains as well as the convoy captains who originally, were the captains for the convoy coming into town.
Yeah.
Okay. And at this point as well, so first I'm going to get to this question here, if I can find it. It was a very good question. Phoebe. Okay, here it is. This is from the YouTube chat, and we're also on Rumble right now, as well as Facebook Live, so as well as Twitter Live. Phoebe asks, was Chad's role as an auditor or more of an allocating / reporting financial transactions?
So I guess that that like auditor, that would be an external accountant. No, I wasn't an auditor. And a treasurer, usually, you get your responsibilities from the bylaws, and there's no job description about what the president, vice president, treasurer, or secretary should be in the bylaws. And the bylaws mention that the accountant must be an external third-party accountant, which I could not be. And even the Not-for-Profit Act of Canada states who should be the auditor, and it's a third-party external accountant. So I was a volunteer and considered internal, and so I could not be the auditor. I was disqualified. I wouldn't be considered third party.
You would not be considered third party as you were a director.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Got it. All right. So I hope that answers your question. So the question from Phoebe was Chad's role as an auditor or more of an allocating / reporting financial transactions? So this would be more of the latter then, allocating, reporting financial transactions?
Well, really, it was open, like, because there's no description. Whatever I did financially was just whatever I volunteered to do. So I tried to get them bank accounts. I tried to solve financial problems. Like, I set up the Stripe account in Ottawa, by the way. I didn't set it up in Moose Jaw. I set it up, I think, on the 5th of February. And this is in the POEC report. It's public record. I asked Keith Wilson if it was possible to use his lawyer trust account because to set up a Stripe account, you have to have a bank account for the money to settle to from Stripe. And I still didn't have a bank account. So I said, well, what if one of the lawyers let us use their trust account? So Keith gave us his trust account information, and I put that into the Stripe account as the account information. So solving problems like that, like, it was just whatever I could think of is what I did as a volunteer, but I didn't have a job description. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable answer. If we have any more questions from the chat, then I will read it. I'm also looking at the Rumble chat, and we've got Kabooble. He says, hail, brother. All right, so at this point, this is an interesting question. Melissa Ross says, where did Mr. Keith Wilson for the Wilson Law Office come into play?
On February 1st, the JCCF was sending Tamara emails saying that they wanted to meet with her about being the lawyers. And Tamara sent me the Zoom link introducing me to Andre Mamari from JCCF. And so I said, well, I'm going to join this call because they should know that, you're trying to formalize a formation or a corporation. And so I joined the Zoom call, and Keith Wilson was on the Zoom call, Andre Mamari from JCCF, some Canadians for Truth people like Joseph Burgo and Ryan Olson, his son-in-law, and a doctor was on the call as well. And Keith told Tamara that he was the lawyer for Brian Peckford, who was suing the government over travel mandates, and he really wanted to represent her and the truckers. And then after that, they asked me to arrange for their travel accommodations and wanted their travel to and from Ottawa paid for. So Tamara asked me to help them with that, and they asked me to help them with that as well. So yeah, that's how they got involved.
Okay, so the JCCF, in other words, the JCCF approached Ms. Tamara Leach. Is that correct, Mrs. Tamara Leach?
That's what I witnessed. That's what I saw. Yeah, and that's public record as well. That's all in the POEC report.
Okay. All right, so let's see over here. So at this point, when you say arranging travel to Ottawa, what does that entail?
Well, they were saying that many of the lawyers couldn't travel on airplanes because of their vaccination status, so they wanted a chartered flight to Ottawa. Because yeah, and I looked into it. I got a couple of quotes, and I said to Tamara, "This is crazy. Like, the cheapest I can find is $64,000 to fly from one end of the country and back." I said, "If you don't want all these lawyers, this is all by text message, by the way. It's all in writing." I said, "If you don't want all these lawyers there, or if the truckers don't want or need these guys there, we should reconsider, because this is very expensive." And at the end of the day, it was decided that they should go, and that they were wanted. And so I put the flight together to fly the lawyers out, and it was $64,000. And I, like I said, going back to the conversation where Tamara asked me to get on that plane, the plane was in Saskatoon, picking up JCCF lawyers there. Tamara wanted me to go, so the plane rerouted down to Regina, and then I drove from Moose Jaw to Regina, got on the plane, and then we flew out and picked up another lawyer. I believe it was Alison Pajovic, and then we went into Ottawa. And then she couldn't pay for the flight. By the way, the retainer that she signed indicated that their flight had to be paid for by them. Tamara couldn't pay for the flight because all of her accounts got frozen. So Chris Garrah paid for the flight, $64,000.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a few questions here to clarify. So the $64,000 was paid by Mr. Chris Garrah out of what funds? Was that personal funds?
It was from the fundraiser that he was doing for Adopt a Trucker. So he considered those lawyers to be his lawyers too, and that they were going to act in the best interest of everybody. It was this at the time, we really did believe and thought that it was all for one and one for all. And so Chris paid off basically. Chris Garrah paid off.
Garrah, right.
Yeah, I say Garrah.
No, that's fine. I just want to, I want to use full names because there's a lot of people with the same first names in this. Yes, please continue.
So Chris Garrah paid off that commitment. And I was there when he did it. So I said, like the airline provider, they were like, "Holy cow, how are you guys going to pay?" Like, they're like, the fuel that we used was almost what cost us to fly. Because so he went to the Swiss hotel that Chris set up. So Chris Garrah set up the Swiss Hotel where a lot of the volunteers stayed and worked out of, and he was there, and Chris got to meet him, and so Chris agreed he was going to pay for it. So he paid for it.
Okay, so let's see over here. We've got Epicus 2.0 in the chat, in the YouTube chat. It says charter flight much cheaper. Was this a charter flight?
Yeah, it was a charter flight. Yeah, it was $32,000 to fly from Western Canada to Ottawa, and $32,000 to fly back.
Okay. How many people were on this flight, asked Rickerty.
There was 3 JCCF lawyers, Keith Wilson, so that's 4, another lawyer, 5, me, 6, Dwayne, Tamara's husband, that's 7. That's when that's kind of a funny one, because when Dwayne was testifying at Tamara's bail hearing, he said he was flown out on a private jet, not a chartered flight, because he didn't know the language. No problem. So that sparked this hilarious controversy that they were backed by billionaires with private jets.
Okay. All right. All right. I just want to, okay, so now regarding, you mentioned something here that that's interesting. So that first retainer that was signed to retain the JCCF as representation, with, how would you term Mr. Keith Wilson's relationship with the JCCF? And then also I'd like you to clarify what the retainer says in terms, or what the legal agreements, whether or not it's in the retainer or if there's a separate agreement regarding the flights and the cost of those flights.
Yeah. So in that original retainer, which I actually became a personal party to on February 20th, just so everybody knows, because I think JCCF or Keith Wilson is trying to say that I was never a personal party to that retainer, but I did become that because Keith Wilson asked me to be. And that the JCCF retainer specifically indicated that the people that signed the retainer were responsible for paying for the lawyers' travel to and from Ottawa. And Keith Wilson is a signatory on the JCCF retainer. I believe it's Section 10 of the retainer indicates that Wilson committed to paying costs awarded against us if we lost a lawsuit and the judge said we had to pay the other party's legal fees.
Okay, there's a lot there, so I just want to pause you right there. Okay, so this is the original retainer on the screen. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's right. And then a bunch of us, and then on February 20th, Keith and I did a text exchange where he said he wanted the board of directors to be personally on there, but I had to agree to that, and I said I agree. And then he also wanted Danny Bulford and Tom Marazzo to be added personally as well.
This is a second retainer. Is that correct? That's a second retainer you're not talking about? No, the first original retainer.
I'm still talking about this one. So okay. in text messages with me, Keith asked me to agree to adding more people to this retainer, including me personally.
Okay, because right over here, what we have, right, the final page of this original retainer is, it says here, dated this 3rd day of February, and there are 2 names here, Tamara Leach, Chris Barber, and then it says over here, Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, the JCCF, Wilson Law Office, Chad Eros as lawful representative for Freedom 2022, Human Rights and Freedoms, which is, we call informally Freedom Corp, and then we've got Mr. Benjamin Dichter's name here as well. Is that correct?
Yep. And at that time, only Chris Garrah and I were the directors of Freedom Corp when I signed this.
Interesting. Okay. And now you're saying regarding Section 10, now this retainer agreement right over here, Section 10, you mentioned Section 10, if you'd be so kind as to, again, speak about that while I display it on the screen. Thank you.
Yeah. So, in the event that costs are awarded against you at the conclusion of an unsuccessful court action or court application or other proceeding, Wilson Law Office will be responsible for and pay those costs. So, what that means is if we lose a court case and the judge says you have to pay the counterparty's legal fees, then Wilson Law Office promised to pay those.
Okay, I see. So this agreement then really is between the parties who signed, as well as the JCCF, and very expressly, I've never really seen that before. It's that there's in Section 10, it is stated that Mr. Keith Wilson will be personally responsible, or is it the Wilson Law Office? Let's go through that again. It says Wilson Law Office.
Wilson
Okay.
Law Office.
All right.
So his law firm.
All right. So his law firm will be responsible for any costs that are awarded against you. So this sounds extremely, let's say.
Actually, paragraph 9 explains it, Ro.
Yes. Go ahead, brother.
Paragraph 9 says the unsuccessful party in a court application or court action is almost always ordered to pay a portion of the successful party's court costs, which are set by a tariff in the rules of court. Paying a portion of the victorious side's legal bills is a normal risk of litigation, which all parties assume when they go to court. It is not possible to conduct any litigation without taking this risk. And then it goes on to paragraph 10. In the event that costs are awarded against you at the conclusion of an unsuccessful court action or court application or other proceeding, Wilson Law Office will be responsible for and pay those costs.
So this sounds to me, now correct me if I'm wrong here, please, or what is your understanding of these terms? These terms are, I'll ask you that instead of giving my own opinion. What is your understanding of these terms?
That there's no risk, like that JCCF's going to take, JCCF and Keith Wilson are going to take all the legal cost risk on if we agree to hire them as our lawyers. That was when we got off the plane and we got in our cabs and we drove to the Ark Hotel where Tamara Leach was staying. We came into her room, introduced ourselves because that was the first time I ever met her, and then Keith sat down and said he was all in. This was his kid's future at stake, and he talked about this, how he agreed to take on this risk. So he said, "I'm all in. This is our kid's future," and he did he spoke about how committed he was to the cost. And I turned to Andre Mamari and I said, "Well, there's no risk then. This deal seems okay. Like, you guys are gonna take care of everything." So there was a discussion about that even the first time we ever met Tamara.
Okay. All right. So here we are at that point. You've got a fully formed board of directors that we just showed on the screen. You've also got a set of bylaws. You have at this point a GoFundMe that is running, a GiveSendGo that is running. The GoFundMe gets frozen, and the GiveSendGo takes over, and you are the initiator. Please speak to me about the relationship you have with Mr. Jacob Wells and those Stripe accounts. And I'll just give a little background to the chat in case anybody doesn't know. So Stripe is a payment processor. When you put your credit card into either GoFundMe or GiveSendGo, that credit card information is processed by Stripe. Stripe is a international company that specializes in credit card transactions. At that point, they are the ones who will actually put the funds into a bank account. Now, there's Stripe USA and there's Stripe Canada. That's an important distinction to make because of the freezing around the bank accounts, the stopping of the GoFundMe. So it was GoFundMe who decided to stop, not Stripe USA or Stripe Canada, when they decided to halt the fundraising on the GoFundMe platform. That was decided by GoFundMe, not by Stripe. Is that correct?
Well, that's tough to say because, well, yeah, primarily GoFundMe. They took responsibility for saying that they're the ones who made the decision to shut it down. But you also have to know that Stripe has a bank account with HSBC, and the conversations between Stripe and HSBC are public record now, regarding shutting down the fundraiser, and so it seems more like the facts point to all these parties agreeing to or figuring out that they should shut down this fundraiser. But yeah, you're right though that GoFundMe said that they were the decision makers in that regard.
Okay, because Stripe was the payment processor for GiveSendGo still, right? Because that's their payment processor at that time. So they weren't, like, I'm just sort of saying that
Right.
if the
Just to
GiveSend,
clarify,
yes, sir.
Stripe, what I didn't know then that I know now is that Stripe was almost also the payment processor for GoFundMe. So when
Yes.
I thought I was switching to GiveSendGo and getting away from financial institutions that were, I guess I should back up. On January 31st, I had no idea that the same financial institutions involved with GoFundMe were the same as GiveSendGo. So, I set up a Stripe account on about February 5th. February 5th is when I set up the Stripe account, and asked Keith to use his bank account, his trust account, to set up the Stripe account.
Okay, so did that proceed then? Did the bank account associated with the Stripe account that you set up, was that indeed then Mr. Keith Wilson's trust account?
Yeah, but no money went to it because Stripe Canada immediately started to come up with reasons not to pay out, and so before February 5th, Jacob Wells was using GiveSendGo's Stripe account, and all the money being donated was going to the USA. And actually, that's why GiveSendGo could even refund people in the first place, is because I couldn't set up I couldn't set up a Canadian bank account and a Canadian Stripe account. So all the money was going to the US to GiveSendGo. And when GiveSendGo found out that none of the money was going to go to the intended beneficiaries, basically the truckers, they shut down the campaign and refunded everybody. But in the 3 days that I had a Canadian Stripe account going, because I finally got a bank account that I could fill in the blank with, in those 3 days, $3.7 million was raised, and that money got trapped and frozen in Canada.
Okay, so
and that's why, yeah.
So this then makes sense in the sense that we can understand what we're looking at here then. When we look over here, This is the POEC, the Public Order Mercy Commission PDF that they put together called Overview Report, Fundraising in Support of Protesters. This is the last page. If you look then at this escrow amount, this pink line, if you look at this thick pink line, it says, you continue down over here and it says Eros Stripe account. So this is what we're looking at then. This is the $3.7 million that is currently part of the escrow funds. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes. That's, on February 5th, I set up a Stripe account with Keith Wilson's trust account as the settling account, and it went live, and $3.7 million got donated under that. It got trapped in Canada, frozen, and eventually put in escrow to be made available for the class action lawsuit. That's $410 million right now. Also, the Attorney General wants the money in a civil forfeiture claim for the government to take the money for themselves.
And that is an Ontario civil forfeiture claim, or is that a federal?
It's Ontario.
Okay. All right. So let's see where we are now. We're at the point here where $3.7 million have been transferred to a Canadian bank account that is now frozen. That is where that pink line was, just to put that back up on the screen here. All right, so that is Eros's Stripe account, that thick pink line right there, which goes into the escrow. That's $3.7 million, what Mr. Chad Eros just told us. And the rest of that GiveSendGo money, though, is refunded by Mr. Jacob Wells. Did you have an agreement with Mr. Jacob Wells, and what were the terms, if you did, of that agreement? Because at this point, the funds that are being raised are going into his own Stripe account. Is that correct?
Yeah. So whatever didn't go into my Stripe account went into his. And there was a trust agreement made. When I was in Ottawa, Jacob Wells sent over a trust agreement saying that he would hold the money in trust for us, just kind of like a bank, like I'll be your bank kind of thing, because that's what a bank does, holds money in trust for you. And Keith and I sat down and we looked at this trust agreement and we massaged it a little bit, and then we sent it back to him, and we signed the agreement with him, and yeah, that's how he held the funds for us that he raised under the U.S. Stripe account. Okay.
And that is a separate agreement that was made with Mr. Jacob Wells that was worked out, just to recap, just to work out with Mr. Keith Wilson, yourself, and Mr. Jacob Wells, worked out a legal agreement that would ensure that Mr. Jacob Wells would be accountable to the money being put into his Stripe account.
Yep. Yeah, but I couldn't, when he refunded everybody their funds, I was prohibited from giving any direction on what could be done with that money. So, the terms and conditions of using GiveSendGo are that they can return the money at any time. Like, they can end any fundraiser at any time for any reason, and they can return the money to the donors at any time for any reason. Those are the terms and conditions. Those are the boilerplate terms and conditions of using GiveSendGo. And it's kind of the same. It's that way with GoFundMe as well. Like, they can just shut your fundraiser down and return the money whenever they want. So at some point in time, Jacob Wells made the decision, and he testified to this multiple times, that he said, whatever money he controlled, he returned it. And I couldn't and didn't give any direction into that matter, because I was prohibited by the Mariva injunction for doing anything with the money. Like, I had to basically put a great big, piece of tape over my mouth and shut up. And because if I would have gave directions, I could have been accused of violating a court order.
Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit about your experience, because you have a lawsuit right now that you filed, right? This has been made public record. I'm going to pull up the lawsuit over here. All right. So this lawsuit over here, let's go right to the top. You've got the stamp over here in the top right corner, Court of King's Bench, Moose Jaw, filed February 28th, 2023. And it says over here, court file number KBG-MJ-00029-2023, Court of King's Bench for Saskatchewan, Judicial Center, Moose Jaw. And if you would be so kind as to read the rest, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
Like just point number 1 there, notice to defendant.
No, let's see the plaintiffs, defendants, and then to start point number 1. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I am the plaintiff, Chad Eros. The defendants are Keith Wilson, Evich Poec, Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. So the notice to defendant, the plaintiff may enter judgment in accordance with this statement of claim, or the judgment may be granted pursuant to the King's Bench rules, unless in accordance with paragraphs 2.
Right,
anyways.
Yeah, we'll stop right there. But and we're going to go through these points, okay? So there's a statement over here. The statement of defense must be served and filed within a period of time, okay, depending on where you are geographically. And then it continues on here. It is dated the 28th day of February 2023. Today's the 2nd of March 2023. So we're going to continue over here. Statement of claim. Okay, so let's just go through 1 to 4, and then we're going to give a background here. We're going to go look at every point, all right, and we're going to actually, you're going to explain to us what this is, if you'd be so kind.
Well, maybe what we could do is, because it's tough, because I'm not gonna there's this thing called examination in chief when you're testifying in a court of law, and I can't have today be my examination in chief, like my testimony about everything what's going on. But at the end of the day, what's happened after all of the convoy, the protest, me being a treasurer, is that I've been accused of being mentally insane. People shouldn't listen to me. People shouldn't trust me. That I misused donations. I've been, all the promises made to me by JCCF and Wilson Law Office have been reneged. They are not going to provide me with funding for my legal fees, even though they ran fundraisers, even though they asked me to be the treasurer, and as lawyers tried to, they swayed me or convinced me to be the treasurer. Basically lawyers, when they represent a client, it's extremely highly unusual and inappropriate for them to badmouth their client, even if they part ways, to go on YouTube or for them to have clients that I had basically joint representation with, and that might not be the right term. So, that they would all form some sort of conglomerate and media strategy to say that I am a mentally ill person that shouldn't be trusted, that misused funds and was abusive and harassing and all that sort of thing. So that sort of activity by lawyers is obviously quite frowned upon. And this lawsuit claims breach of fiduciary duty, negligence, and breach of contract. So that's the three things, just to summarize the lawsuit. It's breach of fiduciary duty. So all professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, they owe their clients fiduciary duty. And negligence is, when you do something, when you're neglectful in your duty as a professional. And breach of contract would go back to them not fulfilling their contract and promises to represent us, even though they were running public fundraisers to do so. So, and we were advertising their fundraisers to do so as well. We were telling people, go to JCCF's fundraiser page. If you want to support me, if you want to support us, if you want to support the truckers, please go to the JCCF fundraiser page and donate there. And that's how Keith Wilson and Eva Chapuik were getting their paychecks, from the fundraisers from JCCF.
All right, let's take a look at the chat over here. We've got a question over here I just saw, and this is A-Ray says, "Oh wow, this is amazing. He's suing the lawyers." So effectively, that is what you're doing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a lawsuit against the lawyers of the Freedom Corp. Let's see over here. N.A. literalist says he looks super sane. Lol. Yeah, I would agree. What else we got? Right.
Thanks for that compliment. But even to people who struggle with mental health conditions, that's very inappropriate. Like, what if I did have a mental health issue? What if that was true? Like, what if I had manic depression? To say that I'm a raving lunatic, a maniac, this is why they fired me, this is why you shouldn't trust me, is because I have a mental health issue. That actually can be a human rights violation as well. Like, you can't say that you're firing someone because you think they can't get into the building because they're in a wheelchair and you're not willing to build a ramp for them. Like, if they really truly think that I have a mental health disability and that's the reason why the public shouldn't trust me and that's the reason why they fired me, I'm actually looking into a human rights complaint as well, because that's one of the criteria as for a human rights violation. And people who struggle with mental health, I think that's a very they're already stigmatized in the first place, right? And they're trying to use that offensive act. It's offensive in multiple layers. It's offensive because it's very insensitive to people who have that problem in the first place. It's like they shouldn't be trusted either. They're not capable of doing anything in society. Like,
Okay.
that's.
I understand I understand what you're saying regarding, this
Anyways,
employment law. But what I want to ask you,
inappropriate.
I'm going to ask you this question. Please don't take offense. But are you diagnosed with any kind of mentally illness? Have you in the past or currently ever been diagnosed with any kind of mental illness?
No.
Thank you.
No. And even, people can go through rough times in life, right? And if you're, let's say, if you have a death in the family or you're going through a rough time and the doctor says you should have some counseling or something like that, that's fine. Everybody, and you should do it. And I want to encourage people to do that. And I don't want this situation to make people feel scared of reaching out for help because they might be called a crazy person. Like, so there you go.
Fair enough. All right. I just had to ask. I'm sorry. I've got people who are saying to me, Sheriff of YouTube says, don't put him on the stand, bro. All right. Well, fair enough. But I want to ask that question because I want to get the answer from this man's mouth. This is what we're doing here today. This is part of the audit.
I've never been told that I have a problem with reality, that I don't, I can't see things.
Not to worry. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. I wanted to ask you the question. We got an answer. All right. Let's see here. So here we are. So this breach of, there's a few points here, and I'm going to write them down so we can refer to them again, if you don't mind. Okay, so we've got breach of fiduciary duty, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next one? Because there's three main points that you're making here in this lawsuit.
Negligence.
Okay, negligence of?
Just negligence of their client. Like, they were neglectful.
Okay. Third point?
And breach of contract.
Breach of contract. Okay. So let's see here. We're going to start. Okay. So, and of course, we do know that there is a court case. This is in progress. You have filed a lawsuit. So maybe you, rather than go through point by point, what you can do instead is give us some background. Give us some background of where the board went. Because the board starts, you've got the two of you, you and Mr. Chris Garrah. You then add a handful of people here and walk us through the timeline. Walk us through the timeline all the way up until your departure and then where we are today. But of course, where we are today, you're not privy to, but up until your departure. And you did come back.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Well, as you know, there is another. I'm gonna do it this way.
Sure, you do it as you like.
I already told you how we formed and all that sort of thing. And so I'm going to start at this point here. You said, what was the purpose of the board kind of thing? And I said, well, really, we only had that purpose of properly dealing with the money. Then there was then the lawyers with some select people. One of them was Tom Razzo. They went to the mayor's office and they were working on a deal to move trucks. So they started to take an, well, that was one of the ways they were taking an active role in directing people what to do at the protest.
But to be
making plans.
clear, Mr. Tom Morasso has never at any time been a board of director of the corporation informally known as Freedom Corp.
That's correct. He was never a board member, but while we were out there, our lawyers decided to team up, apparently. And you know what? I'm getting this all after the fact because I didn't know they were doing this when I was out there. I didn't know they decided to team up with Tom Morasso and go meet with officials at city officials, the mayor's office, and make a plan to send all the trucks to Wellington. I didn't know they were doing this behind the scenes until February 11th when they asked us all to meet together. And he said, you know, we had this meeting and this is what we want to do. And depending on who you ask, you'll get a different answer as to what the purpose of that meeting was. And that's why Benjamin Dichter is having a public argument with his lawyers. By the way, Wilson and JCCF were his personal lawyers in Ottawa. He signed that retainer personally, and he's not happy with his lawyers making this deal. So
who are you talking about again? I'm sorry. Who was that you're saying he signed and they're his personal lawyers?
Benjamin Dichter was a director, and he signed personally for JCCF and Keith Wilson to represent him in Ottawa. And he basically, bottom line, he's not happy with his lawyers taking an active role at the protest. It would be like, so let's say I have a for-profit business, I sell farm equipment, and then my lawyer comes to me and says, hey, Chad, I got good news. I made all these awesome deals for you behind the scenes when you weren't looking. And I'd be like, well, this is my business. You don't run my business. What the heck are you doing? That's kind of, I think, what Benjamin Dichter is complaining about. Like, you don't have the right to do that. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's my understanding of his complaint. It's kind of my complaint too, because how am I supposed to know that what they did behind the scenes is what they're telling me what happened and the reason for it and things like that? So anyways, they were coming to the board and basically getting us to sign off on what they already did. Like, we did this. Do you agree with it? You know, and it's like, oh, well, I don't know, like that kind of a thing. So that's what was happening there. Then we all get home, and during the protest on February 6th, a class action lawsuit was launched against the truckers, and Paul Champ said in a pamphlet that some politicians were actually handing out. The pamphlet said, if you leave now, you won't get added to this lawsuit. Phone us and tell us that you left, and we won't add you to this lawsuit. So that on February 6th, that happened. Then after the protest ended on, well, maybe it didn't end yet. On February 18th, the day after Tamara and Chris Barber got arrested, Paul Champ added a bunch of new people to the lawsuit. That's when he added the board of directors to the lawsuit. They added us personally, and they added Freedom 2022 to the lawsuit. And on February 20th, Keith and I had a text exchange where Keith said he wanted all of us to be personally added to the first retainer. And then on February 24th...
Just explain the fact that there are two retainers and some background around that, because people don't necessarily know. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm getting to that in about 30 seconds. That will be there. So on February 24th, all of a sudden, Keith, he said he wanted to meet with a bunch of us, Danny Bulford, Tom Morasso, Thomas O'Connor, and all the board of directors, because we all got added to the lawsuit. And he told us that he wanted us to fire JCCF and not be with them anymore, and to all move over to his personal law firm, Wilson Law Office. The reason that he gave was that he was one of us. He was there. John Carpe, the president, didn't understand us, and he was constantly pestering Keith about us abiding by the original JCCF contract, the communications sections, which say we can't tell our stories, we can't go on media, we can't, do that stuff unless we ask JCCF first. And JCCF, it also says in that retainer that JCCF can use our stories to fundraise, and that they're going to use our stories to fundraise. And so Keith said he didn't want us to be a part of that anymore and to move over to his law office. And they were all about to unanimously say, yeah, let's go over to Keith. JCCF doesn't understand us and doesn't get us. And I stopped the whole thing and I said, whoa, we have no money. We have no bank account. We have no way to raise funds because we have a court order telling us that all our money is frozen and we can't even use it if we do raise money. And we're being sued for $410 million. And JCCF has been raising money and they have a public fundraiser. I said, let's slow this down and let's ask John Carpe and JCCF how much money they raised, how strict they are about their communications directives in their retainer, and just ask him some questions. If we like his answers, then we stay with him. If we don't like his answers, maybe we can leave. So they were all about to fire JCCF and leave and go over to Wilson Law Office. And I put a stop to that. Then weeks later, a new retainer came out, and Keith said,
what do you mean you put a stop to that?
Sorry?
What do you mean you put a stop to that? Because its retainer is presented to you. You have an original retainer with the JCCF that says at section 9 and 10 that any claims against you, any costs awarded against you will be covered by Wilson Law Office. Then you're presented with a new retainer, this time expressly only with the Wilson Law Office, and you do not like the terms. Why and how did you put a stop to it? Thank you.
Okay, so there wasn't a new retainer when Keith told us we should fire JCCF. That was February 24th. And I said, guys, we shouldn't abandon JCCF because we'll be leaving all that fundraiser money behind, and we have no way to pay Keith. Then, so then 2 weeks later, we got an email from Keith saying, me and JCCF came to an agreement. You are going to move over to me anyways, so you're not going to be clients of JCCF. And so basically he copied and pasted the JCCF retainer, but 3 things were changed in it. 2 of them, not 3 things. One of the things that changed was Keith's promise to pay costs awarded against us was removed, and then we were made responsible to pay those costs. And the other thing that changed was that if there were damages awarded to us, like let's say the Paul Champ lawsuit was very vicious and it was found to be vexatious and it ruined my life. Let's say, and then the judge said, you know what? You shouldn't have added Chad to that lawsuit and he's entitled to damages. I award Chad $1 million. In the new Wilson retainer, the JCCF would get all of that money and I would get nothing. So that was another thing that changed. And they promised to pay all of our legal fees. And at one point, one of the lawyers that got subcontracted, and I don't blame this guy, by the way, the lawyer's name was Norm Groot. He was helping us with the Mariva injunction. I believe that he was just doing what's normal for him in his practice. He was subcontracted by the JCCF, and he asked the judge if he could get paid $100,000 from our money. And the judge said, yeah, sure, because that's a normal practice. But the only way that I knew about that was by reading the court documents. And so I alerted the board that, hey, the lawyers are starting to pay themselves from our pot of money, even though they're raising money through JCCF. We should probably get refunded that money. And when I asked, after I asked those questions.
And when you say our money, you mean the money that is raised for the truckers, correct?
Yes, the money that was raised in the Stripe account that I created.
Thank you.
So they started to get paid from the frozen money from the Stripe account that I created. And all I said was, the contract says that JCCF is going to pay our legal fees. We have to raise our own money to pay costs now, and we have no money. So can you please reimburse us that $100,000 to stay in compliance with the contract and the new terms? And after I asked those questions, things completely went sideways. Like I was being sworn at. I was, being told to, stay in my place. The board of directors were told that they had, so on June 2nd, on June 2nd, I was told by Miranda Gassinor that she spoke with Keith, and I wasn't allowed to ask my lawyers any questions anymore, or JCCF would stop financing our personal legal fees, and that they would be left all on their own to pay their own legal fees, and they wouldn't have any lawyers. So they told me that I wasn't allowed to ask questions anymore, and I had to shut my mouth. And that's when I resigned. I quit. I said, you can't ask me to do that. Like, I'm supposed to be the treasurer looking after the well-being of the nonprofit that's supposed to act in the best interest of the members and the public at large. You cannot ask me to do that. So I wrote a resignation letter and I quit. Then another significant event happened. Tamara Leach was arrested because she attended a JCCF gala giving her a Freedom Award. And when the board was watching her bail condition hearing, they realized that all of the accusations to accuse her of breaching her bail conditions were from the lawyer's actions, inviting her to this gala, Keith Wilson basically acting as an advocate for her rather than a lawyer, accusations that the JCCF was something more and different than just a legal advocacy group, because they brought up that John Carpe hired a spy or investigator to spy on a judge presiding over a case that JCCF was in. And I think the Law Society, anyways, he admitted that he did that. He apologized, but there was this prevailing notion that he had no good reason to do that other than to dig up dirt on the judge and blackmail him with that dirt.
Okay, so just to give some context, so what Mr. Chad Eros is talking about is that the president of the JCCF, Mr. John Carpe, has been implicated in a case where he has hired a private investigator to follow a judge, just as far as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yeah, a judge that was presiding over a case that JCCF was in. So it was not just a judge. It was a judge presiding over a case that JCCF lawyers were involved in, so
right. Mm-hmm.
Which makes it a bit worse. So the directors are watching the attorney, are watching the Crown prosecutor say Tamara Leach is involved in something more than just being a protester. This was their argument. I'm just telling you the facts.
And where is this taking place? Where is this taking place?
Tamara's bail hearing. Because remember, she got arrested in June and July, like June/July, and she spent like almost a month in jail. because she went to the JCCF Freedom Award, and they accused her of being with people on her no contact list, and there were pictures of her with people on her no contact list. I think the primary person was Tom Razzo, and so she went to jail for that. So the directors were really spooked and really scared. And so they started to talk to me about a month after I resigned.
This is the board of directors of the Freedom Corp. We're really, right? This is what you're talking about? Right. Okay.
Yes.
And they started talking to you
so
a month.
I had a month off of not talking to them, not doing anything. Like my wife said, "You're done." Like after they told me I'm not allowed to ask questions, my wife was like, "Yeah, you can't be with those people anymore." Anyways, they started to talk to me again, and they invited me to go to a board meeting. They said, "We want to know why Keith told us to get rid of you. Like, ask him, and we want you there because all this is really scary to us, and we don't get anything anymore." So I went to the board meeting, and instantly Eva was resisting me being there, saying, "What are you doing here? I thought you weren't a board member anymore." The lawyers have to be careful who they give legal advice to, and so on and so forth. She was resisting my presence, and I said, "Actually, they asked me to be here. I'm still a member of Freedom Corp, and I'm allowed to observe a board meeting as a member." That's a common thing. Members of not-for-profits can go to board meetings and be an observer, and they can talk at a meeting if the board asks them to. So that's what their plan was. They wanted me there to speak with the lawyers and get the truth about why they wanted me gone. And Eva was resisting this, and I said I had the right to be there. And then I actually said to her, all of our retainers are with Wilson Law Office, but you work for JCCF. So why are you here? Like, do you work for Wilson Law Office, or do you work for JCCF? And any like legal advice that Keith gives us, his client, like, why are you here watching that? So I kind of, this is what happened. So anyways, the meeting went on. Keith arrived into the Zoom chat after me, told us Tamara was being treated bad because in jail and all that sort of thing. And then he said, "And we need to stick together, and we can't be divided." And that was like a segue for me to say, well, if you want us to be united and you want us to stick together, the board actually wants me to ask you, like, why did you tell them that I had to go? Otherwise, JCCF wouldn't finance the legal fees. And he resisted answering. He wouldn't answer. He didn't want to answer. And then finally, he snapped at me and he said, "Look, it's because you want to make things all about you," which is another thing you'll hear, in the public, that people want to make things all about them, and they're jealous and they want the limelight and all that sort of thing. I would characterize that as gaslighting someone. And after the board meeting, the board members were shocked. They were like, "That is a ridiculous reason to tell us to get rid of you." And eventually they said, "We want you back. Come back. We want you back, Chad." And so they voted me back on August 2nd.
Okay, so you come back on the board. Now, there's a couple things here because I want to be clear. So you resign. You write a letter of resignation. Yep. What date was that again?
June 5th.
Okay, so June 5th, 2022, you write a letter of resignation, and then you say that the board asks you to attend, and they vote you back on the board of directors as treasurer?
Yeah, so they invite me to attend a meeting on July 7th. They watch my interaction with Keith and Eva. They're not happy with them. They start to text me while I'm not a board member, and then eventually they want me back, and they vote me back on August 2nd.
Okay, so now
So
you're
meanwhile, my lawyer, I start talking to another lawyer who's in Regina, and that lawyer emails JCCF and Keith Wilson and says, "Look, you guys promised to pay Chad's legal fees, but Keith can no longer be Chad's lawyer because he's taking actions against Chad. So I will be Chad's lawyer, and you can pay me instead of paying Keith." That was the email that this new lawyer that I got sent to JCCF and Keith Wilson. And so that's what happened.
okay. So you're voted back on the board, and that was that a unanimous vote? Was that a vote? How did that work?
Yeah. But basically on August 2nd, a Zoom link was sent out to various board members, and inviting them to come vote me back on. And at that meeting on August 2nd, Miranda told me that Keith left me off of the list of people that should be interviewed or talked to the Public Order Emergency Commission inquiry, and that the POEC Commission sent a letter to Keith asking where I was, how to get a hold of me, because they wanted to talk to me. And Miranda had a copy of that letter, and Keith wasn't sending it to me. So she said, "I'll send you this letter that Keith's sitting on and won't give to you." And she sent it to me August 2nd. And I immediately sent that letter over to the lawyer in Regina, and he set up for me to meet with the POEC committee so that I could be interviewed by them. And then that's why the witness summary statement was created, because Miranda gave me that letter, and then I passed that letter on to my lawyer, who set up a meeting with them. And that's why that, that chart that got made before, that my testimony, or my witness summary, I should say, contributed towards helping make those charts and a lot of the things that the POEC came to understand about the money in the funds.
Okay. All right. So, what is the core aim of your suit?
Well, one of the things that happened is, like, I'm now left with no way to, like, I'm left with no legal fees. I had insurance, but so on August 2nd, when I found out the extent of what was happening with legal after Miranda told me, I made an insurance claim to my professional insurance to help pay my legal fees, because all along I thought that JCCF and Keith Wilson were paying my legal fees. Now I find out not only are they not paying my legal fees, but they're taking actions against me, which is very bad. And so I made a claim on August 3rd to my insurance company, but they said that I didn't apply on time. So my insurance company denied my insurance claim. So I have no way to fund my legal defense in the class action, in the $410 million class action lawsuit. And then John Carpe told my lawyer that JCCF was deciding to not finance my legal fees. So yeah, that's
right.
That's a large part of the lawsuit. I mean, they know that. After these interactions in August, on August 2nd, when they voted me back on, So behind the scenes, my lawyer is talking to JCCF and Keith Wilson saying, look, I should be Chad's lawyer. Plus, Keith and Eva have been active participants in the protest, and they're probably not even going to be allowed to be lawyers anymore because they're going to be witnesses. Lawyers can't be both, eh? They can't be your lawyer and a witness. And that actually came true. Keith Wilson, I don't believe Keith Wilson is the lawyer for Freedom 2022 anymore. And he had to become a witness at the POEC. And so then I get this weird phone call from Ryan Mihilowicz telling me that he's yelling at me. He's saying,
and this is a fellow on the board, right? Ryan Mihilowicz.
Yeah, sorry,
right.
Something happened with my phone there.
No problem. Yeah,
it's really delayed now.
Okay, we can see you fine in any case. Yeah, just make sure it's plugged in because your battery will go out otherwise. Make sure it's plugged in.
Can you take a break for a second here? I got to reset something.
No problem. You go ahead and do that. All right. Yeah, no problem. You do that. Make sure it's plugged in because your phone otherwise will run out of gas. It's guaranteed. And then it's going to stop working. Okay, let's see here. There you go. I got my green screen all set up. Let me read the chat while Mr. Chad Eros reconnects. Okay, because we are going for time today. There's no doubt about it. All right, so let's see over here. Chicken Lady says you can lead a horse to water. ... Melissa Ross says all seems shady. Let's say what else we got over here. We got the Rumble chat. Kenzie's in the chat. Comet 61 is in the chat. KC Bowser's in the chat. Appreciate you being here. What a bloody soap opera, says Liquid Gal. That's right. It sure looks like it. Hey, VQZ says hail. Hail, VQZ. In Darkness says break time, and then a beer icon. Damn great work today. Hail. Hail, brother. I don't know about beer. Not so early yet. We got Yeg Freedom in the Facebook chat. And then what else we got going on over here? Yeah, things are working out. Multi-streaming. We've got Richard.
We have Dawkin, who is usually a troll, but I think he's being sincere here. He says, this is sad to watch.
It is. There's no doubt about it. Peter Biker says, humbled by your interviewing skills, piercing questions. Well, thank you. And I'll really appreciate that very much so. Thank you. I think we've been put in this position where we need to ask questions that are not comfortable, and we've also been in the position now, I think, we got to get to the truth, and it's unfortunate where we are in a way. It's not something that we wanted to be here, but we are here. Dana Lee says you can lead someone to knowledge, but you can't make them think. What else we've got over here? Phoebe, all because of the large sum of money that were coming in, rats are after the cheese. And I'm going to ask him this question, right? Because I want to know what he wants to do with the money, right? What does he want to see happen to the money? What is his thinking around that money that was raised by the good Canadian people? Majority of that money was raised by the Canadian people. It's 85 and 88%, depending on GiveSendGo, GoFundMe, by Canadians for our truckers, people who came down to stand up and inspired an incredible movement that inspired the world, the Freedom Convoy. So I want to know what he thinks when he rejoins, and we're going to ask him that question because I understand he's saying, he's left without lawyer fees, but a lot of people are, and we are taking a very hard line on this. It is that money is due either to be received by the intended recipients or to be returned to the donors, and that goes for everybody, no matter who it is. I think we have to be consistent 100% in that. Otherwise, we're playing favorites, and we don't want to do that. Tina Good says, integrity. Absolutely, that's what we need here. Welcome to the PSYOP, says, thanks, Ro. You're the only one talking about this. Appreciate that. Thank you. Amen, Ro, says Phoebe. Yes. Rickardy says, heart, the small fringe group that inspired the world. Absolutely. That's right. Kenzie says, Monday and Thursday at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's right. 11 a.m. Eastern or 8 a.m. Pacific Time. I'm learning my time zones. Bridget Belton says 100% cover all or cover none. And Bridget Belton, that's an interesting question. She's in the chat here. And she actually was supposed to be on the board, believe it or not, on the Freedom Corp, what we're calling Freedom Corp. That's right. She was supposed to be on the board and was told that it was an oversight, that she wasn't, that she wasn't listed in the legal papers. But that oversight was never corrected, interestingly enough. So Bridget Belton, of course, led many, many truckers over to the Freedom Convoy protest in Ottawa and was an integral part of that, and yet she seems to have very little. It's almost as if...
Let's just say it, Ro.
Yes,
she got cut out. She's one of the original truckers that started this thing, an OG, and they cut her out.
Yeah. I'm going to show something interesting enough. This is put out, hold on a second here, while we get Mr. Chad Eros rejoins. I'm sure he's plugging in his phone. We're going to continue because we want to ask him some hard questions too. He's given his story, but I want to ask as well how he left the board, because he resigned. He was then asked to be back on. He was voted to be back on, and then he was then removed from the board. So that is interesting. Okay, here. So let's look at this up here while we wait for Mr. Chad Eros to rejoin. So what are we looking at here? This is Veterans for Freedom, and they put this out. And this is out on January 28th, 2023. And that says right over here, a big thank you to Bridget and Chris. If you'd be so kind to pan. Thank you, brother.
Okay, from V4F, it says, thank you, Bridget and Chris, for starting the biggest labor movement Canada has ever seen. The members of Veterans for Freedom salute you. And there's two nice pictures of them.
Yeah, very flattering pictures of the both of them. And interestingly enough, she was in communications. She had asked, how come I don't see my name on this official paperwork? And she was told that it was an oversight, which was never corrected. So there's that. But there you go. And we're looking forward.
And when the time comes, we can show that evidence, correct?
Absolutely. What I say here now is backed by a forensic audit. I'm a computer programmer, 22 years professionally. Was chief technical officer for a company called Get It Local here in Ottawa, 130 Slater. I was, like many other Canadians, so this is not it's not special, but a lot of people got let go or fired or during this time, this uptime of upheaval, and I was one of those people in this case, for streaming at the Freedom Convoy. But I've used my technical skills and done forensic dumps. That's right, like the RCMP.
Oh.
That's right, the RCMP does, this is how they get together. You know how they showed all those signal messages,
I remember
text
that.
messages? That's right, at the POEC. So I have done the same, and will continue to do the same with cryptographically signed dumps of people's phones. All right, so
indisputable.
That's right. Okay, so he's not back yet. That's the only way to do this, because otherwise we're going on hearsay, and we cannot go by hearsay. We must go by say, not hearsay. Okay. Let's read the chat while we wait for Mr. Chad Eros to jump back in. I'm going to send him a message here, make sure he's doing okay. Let's see here.
Seems like the multi-streaming is going well.
All right. So we're going to put that down here. All right. In Darkness says critical mass information. Mountain Woman. Keep your eye on the WHO in May. This will be our toughest problem. The unelected control. Any who look it up and be prepared. All this is the big move. That PHUCS, that's Vietnamese, us all. That's right. JCBU undercover. It was a people's freedom movement. The ones that had boots on the ground have their reward. Indeed. All right, let's see what else we got over here. We've got, okay, if it's freezing on Rumble, please refresh. See if that's working for you. What else we have over here? I'm going to just keep this open in case. Okay, so there you go. So Mr. Chad Eros has responded. He is jumping back in. That's perfect. GS says, do forensic dumps smell? They smell like the truth, brother, absolutely. Talon Ross in Facebook chat says, we do not forgive, we don't forget. Absolutely. That's right. So I'm reading all the chats over here. I got 3 open. I've got the Facebook chat, the YouTube chat, and the Rumble chat. And we are going to continue interacting and hearing what you have to say. Camp Cardinal in Rumble says, my Rumble is fine, not freezing. Perfect. Okay. Canada RV says, yes, we are all real people, lol. Jason McCoy says, I remember Bridget's lawyer calling out Rouleau in no uncertain terms. I wanted to give her a big hug. That's right. Yeah. Citizen Deb says, hearsay, say, not hearsay or heresy. That's right. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Future Now says, despite today's serious forensic dump topic, I'm still joining. Absolutely. We have to be. All good with me, Rose says, comment 61 in the Rumble chat. Chicken Lady says, finally someone standing up in a leadership role against this huge problem. Robin Kirk, the YouTube chat says, we just want the lies to stop and someone to we pay in the politician. Mm-hmm. And Don Boulay, if you start a movement and expect money for whatever reason, you're in it for the wrong reasons. Absolutely. Agree completely. Just a Dildo says, bless you, Ro. You're my favorite Indian. And then he puts an icon of a turban where, thank you very much, brother. Appreciate it.
You got to distinguish. It must distinguish.
That's it. Okay, what else we got over here? Yep. Rumble is good over here, says Tinfoil Hat Nick. Hail, brother. Appreciate that very much. GS says, Ro, very chatty today. That's right. Got all the chats open. Hail, people kind, says Melissa Ross. Oh, here we go. Chad Eros is back.
Welcome back, Chad.
He's just connecting, and he'll be back. Yeah, we just want the truth. That's really it. All right. I'm going to pin your chat. And
Hey, guys.
All right. Right on. You're back, brother.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So, sorry about that, guys. I was having really weird technical problems. So I think where we're at is I got voted back on the board, and I got a call from director Ryan Mihilowicz. He's a new director. And he says to me, who the heck is going to pay my legal fees? I just found out Keith Wilson quit and JCCF isn't going to pay our legal fees anymore because your lawyer served Keith with a lawsuit. And so Keith is quitting. Okay. This is in mid-August. It's, I believe August 11th, I get this call and Ryan is livid. And he's saying, Keith quit and JCCF isn't going to pay my legal fees. Are you going to pay my legal fees? Who's going to pay my legal fees? I said, whoa, Ryan, calm down. What are you talking about? My lawyer is not suing Keith Wilson. Well, he is now. All he said is that due to Keith's actions, I need a new lawyer. That's what he said. And that JCCF shouldn't be paying Keith to be my lawyer anymore because of the actions that he's taken against me. That I need a new lawyer. That's it. Keith isn't being sued. So I don't know if that's what he told you. It's not true. And so they had an emergency board meeting and asked John Carpe to come on the meeting. And people were saying to him, this is chaos. This is crazy. What is going on with our representation? And to our surprise, John Carpe answered, well, we never promised to pay your legal fees in the first place. And that's when I said, I can't even believe that you just said that. We have multiple emails and contracts. We have 2 retainers. We have the first one. We have the second one. We have emails from you promising to pay our legal fees, criminal and civil. And so after the meeting, I refreshed all of the emails that John Carpe sent us with his promises, with the retainers. And Chris Barber replied saying, you're crazy. You got paid a bunch of money and never did your job. And that's the first time I ever saw that accusation against me, was in response to me refreshing John Carpe's promises. Chris Barber's response was,
Wait a second.
You got
when
money.
When you say refreshing, what do you mean refreshing?
Well, so you know how when a group of people is sent an email, I just clicked reply all. I didn't even put a commentary. I just replied all, and then Chris Barber said, "What's this all about?" And then I said, we just went to a meeting with John Carpe, and he said that he never promised to pay our personal legal fees. And I'm just showing you that, yes, he did. And then Chris Barber's response was that I was crazy and that I got paid money to do a job I never did. And that's the first time I ever saw that. And I said, who told you that? Who said I got paid money to do a job that I never did? And then he was like, well, you got some money somehow from someone, and you're an accountant, so that must be true. And then he started to spread that over like social media platforms. And then Keith Wilson started to say that as well. He said that, I think, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago on a YouTube video with Derek Smith. He also said that I harassed lawyers. I was very harassing, that I was abusive to Eva Chipuik. Like, if he's referring to when Eva resisted me attending a meeting, the board voted me back on after that meeting. They observed the interaction between me and Keith and Eva not wanting me to be there, and they asked me to join the board again. So then after this August 11th meeting with John Carpe, where I was, he said, we never promised to pay your legal fees. I refreshed the emails. After that, I was voted off, and I was given a letter accusing me of the things that Chris Barber said, and saying that I was putting Canada at risk of losing their charter rights and freedoms, and a bunch of other very flamboyant stuff in that letter. So, that's the story.
Okay. Now, just to, as in your words, refresh everyone's memory, the attempted use of $450K of the truckers, the donations that were for the truckers from the Freedom Convoy, that attempted use, that $450K, right, to be used by the lawyers for, among other things.
That happened a few days after I was voted off. So I wasn't a part of that. I didn't know they were going to do that. But I think it was about 4 days after, or like 3 or 4 days after they got rid of me, they applied to access $450,000 to attend the Poec inquiry. And also in August, just so people know, Keith sent the board, and I wasn't a part of the board at that time, but he sent them an email saying that JCCF agreed to pay for Keith and Eva's wages to attend the Poec commission, and Keith applied to attend the commission without funding. So I think he was relying on JCCF to pay him. That's probably, I'm just guessing, that it's probably a good guess, but that's probably why he applied. He checked a checkbox saying, I'm applying without funding. And then, but then very soon after, applied to court to access the frozen fundraiser funds. He wanted $450,000 of that to pay himself and the legal team, and pay for hotels and meals for the board and whoever else he wanted to be there to attend. Those are just the facts. That's what happened. And, I don't know what to say about that. Those are just facts.
Right. Now that was denied by the court.
It was denied. Yeah.
Right.
And then I think he took another attempt at applying for funding from the federal government. When I say he checked the checkbox to attend without funding, that's the federal government form. When you're applying to attend the inquiry, you're applying. So he got a status. He got standing. Standing means that you are allowed to cross-examine witnesses. And in his application for standing, he checked the checkbox without funding. So the federal government was going to give lawyers and witnesses money to attend. He said, I don't want your money. Maybe he was relying on JCCF to pay, because that's what he said in an email to the board. And board members forwarded that email to me when I wasn't a board member. And then I think later he applied to get funding, and I think he got it. I think the federal government gave it to him.
I did see some paperwork regarding Justice Rouleau then being asked, and he says in his conclusion there that this was when they asked for that after being denied for the $450K from the truckers funding. After that, they then reapplied, and Justice Rouleau actually was in the he concurred. He wanted right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're not going to pull that.
So yes. I'm not going to say, those are facts. That's what happened. Not going to say, and that's why these people are bad people. That's why these people are crazy. I'm not going to say they have mental illnesses and all that sort of weird stuff like they've been saying to me, like saying about me in multiple social media platforms. But that's just what happened.
Okay. Now we've heard this statement that lawyers need to be paid. Now there's no doubt about that, but where was that payment supposed to come from? Because it wasn't supposed to come out of the truckers. The donations for the right.
No, that's not. Lawyers don't need to be paid. I don't know why people keep saying that. Like, I am a CPA, and I'm not arguing. I'm not saying they shouldn't be paid. I'm saying, what's the premise here? What are we talking about? When lawyers do work pro bono, that I've seen so many people, like, I've seen comments where people say pro bono doesn't mean for free. Yeah, it does. When you take on a case pro bono, it means you think it's for a just cause and this person needs representation. I can do work pro bono as an accountant. I can say, this person's in financial trouble. They deserve a fair shake. No one else is going to do this unless I do it for free. That's what pro bono means. Now, they were never working pro bono, ever. The lawyers were and I'm not saying this to disparage them. I'm just telling the truth. I'm not saying they shouldn't have been paid. I'm not saying they should. I'm saying that people were donating millions of dollars to JCCF, and they were getting paid from that money during the protest, after the protest, and at the POEC inquiry. So they were always being paid. People are saying, well, they should be paid. That's fine. They were being paid. And the issue is, that we could not raise money because all our money was frozen. And JCCF said, okay, we'll pay your legal fees. But then they started to try and pay themselves from the frozen money pot. Now, if we could have applied to court to pay our lawyers from those frozen fees all along, that means that we could hire whoever we want, and we weren't stuck with a certain lawyer or a certain organization. And that means that we were in the driver's seat, and if we didn't like a contract, if we didn't like the terms and conditions of a contract, and we were able to access those funds for ourselves, then JCCF and Wilson shouldn't have had the power over us that they had, right? So there's that too. So they were getting paid from the fundraiser that they were running. They were getting paid from our pot of money that was frozen. And the contract also says that if we win our case and the judge awards costs awarded against the counterparty, they can get paid from that pot too. And if the judge awards damages to us, they get all of those too. That's 4 pots of money they get paid from. 4. So we definitely know that's not pro bono, right? And I'm not saying that's bad, and I'm not saying that's evil. That's facts. They were so.
But now I just want to correct one thing here, okay? Or you correct me. But from my understanding, they have only accessed, at least on that we are able to trace, $100K, because they attempted another $450K, but they only were able to, so far, on paper, from the paper trail that we have, there's $100K, and that is with this Mr. Norm Groot. And then this is where that issue arose between you and Mr. Keith Wilson and Mr. John Carpe, president of the JCCF, that you wanted that $100K to be reimbursed to the funding for the truckers, that pot, as you put it.
Yeah. So we knew of some truckers that weren't having their legal fees paid for. And behind the scenes, I said, well, maybe JCCF will reimburse us that $100,000 so that we can take care of them. And so that's why I asked. Now, before I asked about that $100,000, I had those discussions behind the scenes with a few of the directors, and they said, yeah, go for it. Ask them if they can reimburse that, because the contract does say that they will pay the legal fees. And so I did.
All right. So I've got a question for you right now, okay? And then I got a couple more pointed ones. One of the questions I have for you, all right, and I am going to, I know this is, it's not an inquiry, but I'm going to ask you some pointed questions, so please prepare yourself. Number one, what do you want to see happen with that money? Because you said that you are running a lawsuit, and that lawsuit, you're saying that, listen, I'm left without, I have 3 main points. Let me just pull those up over here. Okay. 3 main points are, sorry, that's not it. This is it right over here. Please excuse me. Breach of fiduciary duty, negligence of their client, and a breach of contract. And I'm going to pull up the file now so people can see this at home. And we're going to put a link to it so you can download it and you can read the lawsuit for yourself. Okay, so here it is. This is the actual file, the court file. Plaintiffs, Mr. Chad Eros, and then the following defendants, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Chipiuk, Ms. Chipiuk, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, the JCCF. So right there, okay, so this is your lawsuit. Now, what do you want to see happen with that money in a best case scenario, right? That money that was given, what was your intention through the process of being a board member, and what do you want to see that happen now? What would you like to see happen to that money?
Well, okay, we have to make sure not to convolute stuff. What I want, what I wanted, why I joined in the first place, is because I was going back to what I was going through at work. I was on the side of the road cheering for the truckers with my family in minus 35 degrees, standing by a bonfire with fireworks, cheering for the truckers driving by. Then, like a day or two later, I got involved, and I would like the truckers to get what they were originally promised. They were promised reimbursement, a per kilometer reimbursement for their travel to and from Ottawa. That's what they were promised. And I've been told that there is a list of truckers that filled out the forms to get that reimbursement. There's about 300 of them. And I've seen a list that is 120, but I've been told by someone that I trust that it's 300. And the average, there was some preliminary calculations done, and it looked like the average trucker would get about around $5,000, depending on where they lived. So we could, you could say between 4,000 and 6,000. We're looking at around $1.5 to $2 million that should go to the truckers. The original GoFundMe promised to give the rest to a veterans organization. And then the GiveSendGo initially said that, but then quickly after it got changed to include other stuff like legal fees for the truckers, legal fees for protesters involved. Of course, that got added because the Paul Champ lawsuit against the truckers got launched February 6th. So during the protest. So that definitely should happen as well. So you asked me what my wishes were. That's it. And then the thing with my lawsuit is, and I'll refer to the Seneca College case, which is a recent judgment by a judge. The Seneca College case is where JCCF was representing some Seneca College students who said they didn't need to be vaccinated, and anyways, JCCF was representing them in that case, and they lost the case, and the judge awarded costs against the students. It was $150,000 just for these few students. Okay, that's a lot of money. Now imagine what the costs are going to be in this class action lawsuit if the truckers lose, if the people named on the lawsuit lose. I'm on that lawsuit. Lots of truckers are on that lawsuit. Trucking companies are on that lawsuit, and they're trying to add the donors to the lawsuit too. In the Seneca College case, the judge said, hey, JCCF, you were more than just a lawyer on this case. You were pushing the cause. You were directing people, what to do. You were issuing communications and media and all sorts of things. So your client isn't going to get stuck with the costs, and you don't have a good argument for wiping out the costs. You're going to pay the costs because you also raised money for this case. And you have, during COVID, you raised around $5 million. So you're going to pay the counterparty's costs. Well, that goes back to the original deal that Keith Wilson said in the first place. They actually originally admitted, hey, this is a worthy cause, it's worth fighting for, and therefore we agree to pay costs. And so when they came out with this new contract saying, no, we're not going to do that. Well, ever since then, a judge has ruled in court, no, if you lawyers are going to be both the protester, the advocate, and the lawyer, then you're going to pay these costs. And I think a lot of the people that are maybe not happy with the lawyers, it's because they're using their lawyer status to say, we're going to go to these protests, we're going to go to these causes, we're going to direct people what to do and participate kind of be the boss of the whole thing. But when there's lawsuits, you can't sue me because I'm a lawyer. And when you arrest people and throw them in jail, you can't arrest me and throw me in jail because I'm a lawyer. And you can't crack down on me on the front lines and beat me with batons and throw me in the back of police cars because I'm a lawyer. So they're saying, so they're saying, no, we're not protesters. We're just their lawyers. But in the public, in the public domain, there's these spokespeople for the lawyers saying that they're the true heroes and everybody owes it to them. Thank God for these people, these lawyers. And so I think that's where people are saying, like, well, are you one of us or aren't you? Because when the crap hits the fan, you're not one of us. But during the protest, when you want to make all these plans and direct people and tell them what to do, then you say you are one of us. And that judge in the Seneca College case said, you rode the twin horse of advocate and lawyer, and you have to pay these costs. That's basically what's going on here.
Right. So rather than just be legal counsel, they also took an activist role, and that is that there's a conflict there, or a possible conflict there.
Well, yeah, and they told the board who could be on the board and who couldn't. They had to get rid of me, or they were going to pull their legal fee financing. Hold
on a
because
second.
I asked. But
you were told. So refresh that one, because what you're saying here is that legal then determined to some degree which board members would be permitted or terminated?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I missed this important point. I wasn't the only one that got kicked off of the board after John Carpe said we never promised to pay anyone's legal fees. Chris Garrah got kicked off with me. For what? Because he was the original guy that got me involved? Because he was my friend? This is the adopt-a-trucker guy who paid for the lawyers to fly out there when Tamara couldn't pay. That's who they also kicked him off in the same meeting. That's the guy who was at the he was at the protest a week early, setting up with the police where the trucks should go, where the stage should be, setting up billeting for truckers for showers and food and warmth. And then he was the last one to leave. The last thing Chris Garrah did was take in a guy who got driven to the outskirts of Ottawa by the police. He got beat up by the police. Chris Garrah arranged for him to be picked up, driven back to the Swiss hotel, which was empty by then. And he helped the guy, gave him food, cleaned up his wounds. And then he went home. And he said before he left, he sobbed on the ground before he left. That's the other guy they kicked off the board with me.
Please excuse me. I'm going to. I understand that there's a lot of emotion around it, but I'm going to do my best, right, to let's say focus here on what we can clearly and logically and rationally and factually ascertain. There's a lot of emotion on all sides, so we're going to try to. And I'm going to ask you a pointed question here. So then did legal, in this case, in fact, review, amend, and approve the board's minutes rather than simply offer legal advice?
Well, the board minutes, yeah. I mean, Keith wanted to review board minutes before they were agreed upon. And there's a YouTuber saying that he found the lost board meeting minutes for February 11th. I think, people need to understand what board minutes are. They're not, it doesn't matter if you're the secretary, president, treasurer, or if you're just someone who was asked to attend to keep minutes because nobody knows how to do it. Until the board approves the notes, they're just notes. And so Sean Thiessen, a year and a month later, saying, these are the minutes because I took them because I'm the secretary. Those are not meeting minutes. Those are notes, and they have to be approved by the board. And Keith Wilson wanted to have a say in what should be in those minutes. He just did. That's just the way it is. He wanted, and he especially wanted to make sure that the February 11th minutes were correct or said what he wanted them to have in them. Because he emailed me and he said, make sure that the minutes have this stuff in them. And then after we worked as a team to fill in the blanks, he said, yep, this looks good. And then they were approved. So there's this YouTuber that had
let's not
Wilson
name any
on.
names. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm not gonna.
Perfect.
I'm not
Thank
gonna.
you. Yeah.
But because I don't really whatever say that I'm trying to be untruthful or I'm trying to misrepresent the facts or whatever. I'm just saying what happened. I'm not. We worked as a team to create minutes, and Keith looked them over and he approved of them. So I don't know how you can deny that happened. It was all in writing. Keith Wilson is the one who approved the final draft of those minutes to us. And in that email, he said, you all have approved of this. Here you go. And he emailed them to us. So anyways, those are facts.
Perfect. So of course, then by what you're saying here, you have the email correspondence to that effect.
Yes, and I wouldn't even be talking about this if I wasn't being called a liar and being in YouTube videos and across multiple media platforms. I wouldn't even be talking about this in the first place. This is my response to being called a liar who's misrepresenting the facts and forging false meeting minutes. Those are very serious allegations to make, and I believe I'm entitled to defend myself against those publicly made accusations. And I am entitled to defend myself against allegations like that.
Okay, we've got a comment here from Angie P. And she says, Freedom Corp is an oxymoron. You cannot corporatize freedom. Freedom is about individual rights. Freedom, by its very nature, is not something you can control or corporatize. Hail sister.
That's a good comment. I like it.
Yeah, right? I like that one too. Okay, let's see here. Johnny Rush in the Rumble chat says, Hail H.A.I.L, honor, accountability, integrity, and loyalty. Hail, Roe and crew. Thanks for having Chad live. No hearsay. I just saw things about Mr. Keith Wilson just recently, and this is answering some questions when I watched the inquiry with you and Rebel News. Fantastic. We got Johnny Rush again, says, continued, and they were interviewed by Rebel. This is very disturbing how Chad is very informed about the way meetings are run. As an accountant, he's very aware of the rules. And then he asked the question, how come Mr. Wilson is speaking for clients without them knowing or being informed? And that is a comment in the chat. So that is not my statement, to be clear. All right. Now, what I've got a question for is regarding the social media accounts. So would you characterize then the social media accounts, which could be considered an asset of the Freedom Corp? The social media accounts being the Facebook, which has over 370K followers, as well as the Twitter. Would you say that these then are part of the assets of Freedom 22 or Freedom Corp as you decide to characterize it? Would you say those are assets and thus the legal actually does control, in fact, those assets?
Well, there was various board members that had admin privileges on the site. I was one of them. And then
Which site?
On the Freedom Convoy 2022 Facebook page with around 400,000 subscribers. And we were all one day removed as admin. Nobody could log into it. And so I said, hey, did you guys notice we're all removed? And they all said yes. And so I asked Tamara, like, can you reinstate us? Like, what happened? And so Chris Barber kicked us all off the Facebook page. And I said, I just got the corporation a bank account and we'd like to start fundraising. But right after I was successful in getting a bank account and revving up to fundraise for ourselves so we could control our own destiny, we all got kicked off the Facebook page.
Okay, so you were, just to stop you there. So at this point, around what date is this? And you want to fundraise for yourself, for the Freedom Corp itself, right? Rather than having to go through the JCCF as intermediary. So the JCCF, if you go to donate, you'll see on a drop down on the page a drop down box which is populated with a few options. One of them is for the legal defense of the truckers. Now, you're saying that at a certain point in time, and if you could give us an approximate date there,
Sure.
Right? And
this was about little past mid-May, so around like May like
sure, mid-May 22. You're thinking
May 15. Yeah. So we all got kicked off the Facebook page, and I called Chris Barber. He said it's not our page; it's Tamara's page. They're the face of the convoy. And he turned over control of the Facebook page to Keith and Ebba. So after that, on June 1st, I asked Tamara, like, who owns that? And she said, I said, does Freedom Corp own that? Freedom Corp. I never talked like that, by the way, until I heard it said. But I said, does that belong to the nonprofit? And she said, no, I started the page. It belongs to the cause, and that we're not going to have access to it until we're just not going to have access to it because the lawyers don't see they don't understand our communication strategy or whatever. So there's a denial that that ever belonged to the nonprofit, even though if you look on the site right now, I think it says nonprofit corporation. That so after I was told that the corporation does not own that, I felt a little bit tricked because I felt like I was putting posts on that page for a while. And I realized I wasn't, and I was getting like pushback for my posts, like don't put that, don't put this, and from the lawyers. And then I got kicked off of it, and then I was told I wasn't even running a web page that I thought for the owner that I thought it was. So it'd be like, you think you're volunteering for a good cause, like let's say you're working at a soup kitchen, but really you're inadvertently doing something for someone else. So that was June 1st. And then June 5th, I quit because I just thought, well, this, and my resignation letter said, this is all completely under the control of someone else. You can't ask me to not talk to my own lawyers. And even when Ryan Mihalowicz phoned me in August after I got voted back on the board, at every turn, it was like I wasn't allowed legal representation. It's like if I talked to my lawyer, they didn't like it. If I talked to Keith and JCCF, who were supposed to be my lawyers, they didn't like it. And when I say they didn't like it, it would be like Keith and JCCF, and then they would complain to the other board members and scare them that they were going to get abandoned, and then that would put pressure on me to shut my mouth. So at the end of the day, so that's when I quit in June. And you know, that's my answer to your question about whether the social media was ours, like a corporate asset or not. It appears as though they're claiming it wasn't.
Okay, understood.
Which was a surprise to me on June 1st.
If you could give a statement around your attempted opening of a bank account, or you had wanted to, I don't know if you did in the end, specifically to fundraise outside of the JCCF fundraising.
Yeah. In mid-May, I was successful at going to a bank and opening up a bank account. I was one of the authorized signatories. Someone else was supposed to sign, the vice president, but they wouldn't do it. So they did not go to the bank. They did not. All they had to do was walk in, put their signature on a signature card, and it was done. And we had a bank account and we could raise money, but they would not do it.
And what were you trying to do with that bank account at that time in mid-May?
Become what a not-for-profit should be, and be able to be independent and accomplish its purpose, and we could, raise money to help out other truckers who weren't getting legal financing, basically accomplish our purpose. So I asked the board to brainstorm so that I could help them make a budget, because nonprofits come up with a budget, and that's what justifies their fundraising. That's how they go to the public and say, look, here's our fundraising budget. We have all these line items that we want to raise money for. And so I asked them to brainstorm, and some people sent me some ideas. And during that conversation, I said, just think of anything. There's no dumb ideas when you're brainstorming. I said, maybe we want to buy a bus and go around and raise awareness, which if people are paying attention to some of the social media posts, I got made fun of, because they're saying Chad is a crazy person who thinks that we should buy a bus and that's going to help us become more free, just stuff like that. So that's I was trying to get them to create a budget so that we could be able to justify our fundraising activities, legal for truckers, and making good on the promise to reimburse them for their travel to and from Ottawa, like what was originally promised.
Okay. Let me take a look over here. We got Mr. Jason Goulet in the Facebook chat. We've got Cora1 in the Rumble chat, who says, sounds more and more corruption within and greed sets in. Looks like the shiny Keith is not so shiny. Hail to you, brother. Keep up the great work. Thank you. And a big hail to Cora1. Hail Cora1, says Tinfoil Hat Nick. We got Cindy Lynn Gagnon on the YouTube chat, says, hail, fellow scofflaws, watching from Montreal, Canada. Right on. Love Montreal. Okay, let me see over here. So now I'm going to again ask you a question that is going to be uncomfortable, Mr. Chad Eros, CPA. So there's an allegation that you have stolen money or have been paid for work that you did not do. Specifically paid for work that you did not do. Now, I don't know if it's the same as the stealing allegation, so what would you say to these things?
Well, that's absolutely not true. On April, around April 14th, I was asked by Keith to attend a Zoom meeting with Preston Manning, Tamara Leach, Eva Poec, and Keith, because Preston Manning wanted to talk to us about his public inquiry that he wanted to do. So I attended that. Then after the meeting, Keith said, Chad, hang around. I want to talk to you about something. And Tamara and I want to talk to you. And he said, Chad, I've got a donor from Georgia. Somebody, he said, he told me that he wants to give me money to pass it on to somebody. And I know you've gone without any money or wages. And Tamara and I are concerned about you. And we want to, they gave us $10,000 and we want to give you $5,000. And so I said, I immediately, I put my hands in my face and I was like, thank you so much. And I, Tamara said, you deserve it. You've been through a lot. You haven't gotten any money. And so I went out to the kitchen after and I told my wife. She was really happy. It put a huge smile on her face because, things were getting tight for us. So they just said they wanted to pass on some money from a generous guy from Atlanta, Georgia. Then he said to me, the guy wants to give even more. He said, I told the guy about you. He's going to give me 25 grand and I want to pay you 10,000. You put a lot of effort into stuff. So this is, by the way, this is before I asked questions about the retainer, the contracts, the lawyers getting paid. This is before that. This is like 2 weeks before that. 2 weeks. And so he said, to get the money, send me an invoice for litigation support. So I was supposed to send Keith that. So I sent him an invoice for litigation support. Which is okay. I did a lot of work. They relied on me for most of the a lot of just proofreading of stuff. For example, the sworn affidavits that people signed, they would get me to read that over to see if there was anything in there that was gibberish or didn't make sense. Stuff like that. And I did it for free. I did it pro bono. I didn't send anybody an invoice. So Keith said, you've gotten no money, you've received no money, you helped us out, and you did some good stuff for the truckers. Give me an invoice for litigation support, and I'll send you the money. So I did. I originally sent it to Keith Wilson, and he said, no. Don't put Keith Wilson on the invoice. Put Wilson Law Office. So then I changed it to Wilson Law Office. And then he paid me $10,000. So then later I said to Keith, I don't know if I should get this money under the pretext of doing work. If you want to pass it on to me as a gift, then that's fine. Otherwise, I'd like to reimburse you. I want to give the money back because I don't want this to be for work. His response to me was... Hold on a second.
Why? Why did you then... this is days later?
I think it was like a week or two later. I talked to my wife. I talked to some friends, and I said, he said this was a donation from somebody and that he wanted to pass this on to me and my family. So I don't know if I really like the idea of having to issue an invoice for this. Although, did I do work? Oh, you bet. Hundreds of hours. So I just didn't like that idea. And I didn't want to be beholden to Keith either. I didn't want him to be like my boss or my client or whatever. So I'd rather just give it back. So his response to me was, I told the donor who got the money and how much he deserved it and all the sacrifices you made. And he's really happy that you got the money. So just keep it. That's the money that they're saying I got paid and didn't do my job for Freedom Corp. They're saying I got paid to be a bookkeeper, an accountant, and I never did my job for Freedom 2022. So who gave me the money? Well, this guy from Georgia gave it to Keith, who gave it to me, and I invoiced Wilson Law Office. So even if you say, well, he did get paid for work he did in the past, well, that means that we're square. And it wasn't even Freedom 2022. It was Wilson Law Office for litigation support. So for Keith and Chris Barber to go on multiple social media platforms and say that Freedom Corp paid me to be a bookkeeper and an accountant, that's absolutely 100% not true. That never happened. It has no basis in facts, and I'm entitled to defend myself against that. And there's also something else that's a little bit ridiculous about that claim. It is that if Keith really wants to say he was fundraising for Freedom 2022 and that he paid me money from those funds raised, he was actually doing that during a court order that our funds were all frozen and any funds raised would be frozen. He is claiming, I can't believe he's saying this, but it seems like he's claiming that he violated a court order by raising money for Freedom 2022 and distributing it. So I don't know, I don't know why he would do that. Again, I'm not gonna say anything about his character and motives and all that stuff. I'm telling you times, dates, facts. That's just the way it is. That's what happened. That all occurred during a court-ordered freeze on Freedom 2022 assets. So I don't know why he would go down that road of saying I got paid from Freedom 2022. So
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a couple other questions, this time about a few personalities or people who are heavily involved, people who were... so first of all, what is your relationship with Mrs. Bridget Belton?
I don't really have a ongoing relationship with Bridget. Once in a while we talk about maybe social media posts that come out, or maybe can you believe that this video got made, or can you believe that this social media post got made, things like that. But it's not that's about it.
What do you know of the attempt or that the communication where Mrs. Bridget Belton was under the... She was, at least her thought was that she was to be on the Freedom Corp board of directors, which did not materialize. So what is your knowledge of that?
Well, I think it was February 11th. Yep, February 11th. She was added to the board of directors with Joanie Palchet, and at the time I was concerned about chaos. I didn't know who anybody was, and I just said, "Hey, everybody, you can't just add someone to the board of directors like it's a Little Rascals Treehouse Club. It's a serious thing, and just be aware that might not be legitimate." So that was back in February 11th.
Now,
Didn't really know who anybody
just
was.
to interrupt you there, from the amendment papers, from the Federal Incorporation Amendment Papers, which
Yep.
which I actually got from the government,
Yep.
it is not listed at any time, at least from the documents that
Right.
I pulled, that she was legally ever a board director of the Freedom Corp.
Yeah. So she wasn't originally added, and I think what happened, and I wasn't there, but I did get a text saying we just added Bridget and Joanie, and Bridget and Tamara spoke, and Bridget said, "How could you not include me in this important decision? And how could you like not have me on the board?" And so then she put her on, and then uh, when we got home, in the meeting minutes, it was acknowledged that Bridget and Joanie got added to the board, but the corporate records were never updated. And I do have to admit that during all of that, who's on the board and who's not, whatever, it was confusing to me too, because I didn't even know who chose them and how they got chosen in the first place. And then Tamara and Chris Barber went to jail, and they were essentially replaced. So there was a lot of chaos at the time, and I actually feel sorry for Bridget about all of that, because I think a lot of salt got poured into her wounds, and I think my confusion and my advice from the lawyers about that probably didn't help. So yeah, I feel bad, because at the end of the day, I ultimately said, "Look, Bridget, this doesn't make sense to me. The bylaws say a certain amount of directors are allowed to be on the board. We're now exceeding that by like 2 or 3. There wasn't votes to do it, and I think you're just not a director." Like, I actually said that. So, and I feel bad for her, and that all happened, especially now that I know like her backstory, and that like this whole thing started like with her saying we should do we should do like a convoy, we should do a demonstration of solidarity and stuff like that. So yeah, I feel bad that about all that, and I really wish that wouldn't have happened.
Got Bridget Belton in the chat, and she says, "We are okay, no worries. I saw the message from Mr. Keith Wilson." And she asked before that, she had asked, is that not a violation of the NFP? So is that not for profit to not update the records?
Yeah, I mean, what should have happened is, when the new directors were added, somebody should have told the corporate lawyer to update the corporate records. And the chaos that was happening at the time. I sent in the filled out signed bylaws after they got filled out on February 7th. So I scanned those, sent them to Alan Warnock. Then I put them in the mail and sent the originals as well. But then after that, the updated directors that happened 4 days later were adding Bridget and Joanie. I wasn't there when they did that. I don't even know if that was a meeting, or I don't know if that was a board meeting or a member meeting. I don't know what that was. And I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, even though people are slitting my throat ear to ear. But usually it would be like the president or the secretary that is responsible for keeping meeting, documents of meetings, to send that into the lawyer to update the official corporate file.
Okay. All right. Interesting. And you were, just to kind of recap here with the POEC, you were never asked to be a witness.
No. My name was left off the list that Keith made and sent to the POEC to interview and to have standing along with them. So Keith, the POEC looked to, and I found this quite alarming, to tell you the truth, and I did communicate with the POEC over this issue. The POEC looked to Keith Wilson to form a group that would have standing, that would be represented and could testify at the POEC, and he left my name off that list. He left Benjamin Dichter's name off that list, and I believe Bridget Belton as well.
Okay, Bridget Belton she was a witness at the POEC.
Yeah.
Okay, so right. All right, so she still was a witness, though. All right. And so was Mr. Benjamin Dichter. And speaking of Mr. Benjamin Dichter, what is your relationship with Mr. Benjamin Dichter?
Until I was, until mid-August, I didn't talk to Benjamin at all. Like, I was on a board meeting with him on February 24th. That's the meeting when Keith said we should fire JCCF and you should all come over to my law firm. And that's the last time I was around him, like in a Zoom meeting. And then in August, I called Benjamin to get his side of the story about the February 11th, 12th Twitter messages where he's denied that there was a deal with the city to move trucks. So I thought that whole situation was insane, and I wanted to get his side of the story, so I phoned him. So I had no contact with Benjamin Dichter for months, from February to mid-August 2022. So he told me his side of the story. And then after that, I think we've spoken around maybe 4 or 5 times on the phone. So yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'd like you, Mr. Chad Eros, you were acting president of the board of directors for a number of months from the Freedom Corp. You were treasurer before that. When you were brought back on the board, your position again was the treasurer. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes. That's what they wanted me to be. When I came back on August 2nd, Miranda Gassinor resigned as the treasurer. So she had been the treasurer from June 5th to August 2nd, and then I took over that again. That's what my understanding was, but I've seen communication from Keith and Miranda denying the legitimacy of that board meeting, kind of like what happened to Bridget. So kind of saying like that I didn't get reinstated to treasurer on August 2nd, and yet at the same time they want to say that I was fired. So if they don't think that August 2nd meeting was legitimate, then why did they fire me? Anyways, it's like almost every single issue has some sort of weird twist or turn, you know?
Understandable. All right. Now, as we wrap this up, I'd like you to give us a statement on what you would like to see happen to the money that was raised for the truckers, in your opinion. You know our stance here at the War Campaign. It is for that money to be returned either to the donors or to be given to the intended recipients, not only to those who are registered truckers, because I believe that to be a cop-out to a certain degree, okay? It is an excuse to not necessarily reimburse people who were not able, and there's a lot of, let's say there's a lot of controversy about who even was able to register as a registered trucker to receive those funds. And we know there's so many people. We'll be interviewing Mr. Chaba Vizzi, whose body was broken, famously caught on videotape live, as he left his truck, put his hands behind his head, and kneeled on the ground. So these are the people, right? I want to remember all the people who gave up a lot. In this case, a man who has given up some of his health. So now I ask you, Mr. Chad Eros, to give a statement, a summary of what you would like to see happen to that money and any other concluding thoughts that you have. Thank you, brother.
Right. Well, thanks for asking me that. Obviously, like I said during this, I was extremely thankful and happy and joyous, along with my wife and kids, who stood out on the highways cheering for these guys. And yeah, I hope and pray that they get what they were promised, and start with the guys who put their names forward and filled out the paperwork, but also we can know that those truckers were there because some of them were arrested, some of them were sued, or at least given parking tickets, to prove that they were there. There's so many ways to prove that they were there. And so, that was why, that was my hope and dream in the first place anyways. If there is some money left over to help them with legal fees, now the thing is, when you're fighting for your freedom, you can't rely on lawyers to get your freedom for you. I understand that, or some sort of help, paralegal help or something to help them. And otherwise give it back to the donors. Even Paul Champ, the guy, the lawyer who is suing them, there's a Twitter post where he said, if this class action lawsuit falls apart, the money should go to the truckers or the donors and not to the organizers. That's what he said. And I can't, I replied to his tweet. I said, yeah, that's what I was supposed to, that was my role and function in the first place. You can actually find that Twitter exchange between Paul Champ and me. And that's where we both agree, Paul, so that's, I'm going to just wrap it up with that.
Yeah, that post was made on December 7th, and I want to pull that up over here. Okay, so if you would, allow me a little bit of time here to pull that up, because I want to show this. This is interesting that even Mr. Paul Champ is of the same opinion at this point, at least by December 7th, he's at this point, that money really is due to either be returned to the donors or to be given to the intended recipients. So that's interesting. Yep. Yeah, it really is. I'm going to see if I can dig that up. But, Pan, if you'd be so kind, brother, to actually get some of these chats from all of our different platforms and to read those out while I pull this message.
Yeah, let's see. Starting here on YouTube, we have Bridget Belton says, "That's awesome. I hope he protects the money with the rest of us." And then let's see. Let me check what we got going on here. I'm looking Rumble, but I am not able to see the live chat there. I'll have to work on that. It's all new. It's like I'm stuck on YouTube.
Not to worry, brother. Not to worry. Let's see if we can dig that up, because this is... It's definitely interesting to see. All right, here it is. Yeah, this is the... There you go. Okay, let's see what he says here. Yeah, he's talking to you in these messages here. He was ready at this point. Let me see if I can get the exact tweet, because I think it's important to see this. I think it is. It's important to see that at this point we're in a position now, and of course this is somebody who is... How would you characterize Paul Champ, Pan?
Well, we usually call him Paul Chump. you know, and he wants that money too. So I don't want to glamorize him too much, but it's interesting that he has a sensible point there.
It is. And we're going to maintain, I'm going to forget about that post right now, digging it up, but we will put that out just to show that I think this is, at this point, this late date in 2023, we need to remember the people out there who sacrificed a lot, who came down. So many of those, I know Bridget Belton has contacted many of those truckers. There are radical leftist organizations who have put out the private information of all the truckers who were there at the Freedom Convoy. And using that same information, she was able to contact some of those people. And many of those people are no longer in business. They're not able to pursue their art and craft, their employment, their job, their lifestyle, their work. So it is important to support those people. And that is going to be our line, regardless of, anybody and everybody here at the War Campaign. We will continue to hold that line, that it is simply to be returned. That money is to be returned to those who donated, or to be given to those intended recipients. There is a lot of opportunity otherwise, in my view, in our view here, that, let's just say, for corruption. How about that? Corruption. So there it is. A big hail to the chat. Thank you, Chad. Keeping you in my prayers, says won't take the chip. I hope we can get the truckers the help they need and deserve, says Paige Anon. Amazing, says Casey Bowser in Rumble Chat. Never mess with a CPA when it comes to times, dates, numbers, and important information. You will lose every time, says Sinful Hat Nick. Oh, brother. Awesome job.
We do like detail. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It should not nor have ever been considered to go to the organizers, says Shayla Don in the Facebook chat. A big hail, says Tom Holmes. A big hail to the chat. Honor, accountability, integrity, and loyalty. Let's get to the truth and let's keep pushing. Thank you so much, Mr. Chad Eros, and thank you to the chat for being here. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.